We will call this meeting to order. Thank you all for giving us a few minutes of grace period there. Make sure we're all here. City Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Mayor Owen.
Here.
Commissioner Colodi.
Here.
Commissioner McGurk.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Sachs is excused absent.
Okay. First item up is public participation. Any members of the public that would like to speak, now is your chance. Don't see anybody coming forward. All right. Next item is the strategic plan updates and review with Michelle. And I think we all have a sheet in front of us for that as well.
Yes. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Today's item is just a report from where we ended at our last workshop. There were 38 strategic plan items identified through all our previous efforts. And what staff asked at the last workshop was to get a ranking across these 38 items in order to help us prioritize and kind of shortlist some of this stuff so we really know where to focus, because right now, prior to that, 38 items were all equally as important. So in front of you are the results of the individual rankings. There are some items that are identified as, they're competing with another item, both ranking number one in a category, but the intent for our meeting today is to get consensus on the top ranked items, with staff's focus to really start to go after the number one items as deemed as number one. And what we'd like to do after we kind of agree that this is the direction we'll be heading, as far as the platform goes that we've been putting the content into, we've made a new swim lane or bucket, if you will, and we'll be pulling those priority number one items into that category so that we can easily see those items and start chopping away at the priority one list. And then as we go forward, move into item 2 and 3 and then maybe revisit the whole plan again at a future workshop to find what next items become number one. So with that, if there's any item you'd like to specifically talk about, I'm happy to identify the number ones in each category.
Help me understand the green highlighting. What does that indicate?
So when it's green, those are the top 3 in
Gotcha.
each category. And then off to the left side, you can see
The ones
the 1, 2, or
okay.
3.
Yep.
Like I said, in some categories, both are identified as 1 because they average the same score.
And so talk us through just briefly off to the right, the scoring and how you got to that.
Sure. So again, just looking down the column, each of you ranked for this first category 1 through 11. And what we did was totaled the scores across all 5 of you and divided it by the total number of points.
Okay.
And so the lower the score, the higher the priority.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
So again, I can do this really quickly. As far as communication and trust goes, the 2 number ones were, again, more of these workshops. It's the only way we're probably going to get through some of these, to keep talking about it and carving it out of special regular meetings. And you all agreed that was the best way to handle that. And then develop a community survey for benchmarking. And then shortly behind that, start measuring and documenting community participation.
Okay. So the focus today, I guess, Michelle, you said kind of develop consensus. Here's what I want to avoid, and I think there's a good example there, CT number 3. So, I ranked it 2, Commissioner Hartman a 2, Commissioner Sachs a 3, McGurk a 2, Commissioner Colodi an 11. So this is, way down the priority list for Commissioner Colodi, but for the rest of us, it was somewhere in the top, the top 3. So, to me, that's the consensus. So what I'd love to avoid from us, and this, I'm sure there's examples where it's the exact opposite, and I ranked it really low, but everyone else had it high. I haven't gone through the whole thing yet. But to me, this is a good, this was a kind of a free choice consensus type deal. So I'm comfortable. We can talk through these and see if there's anything that jumps out at anybody, but to me, this is about as fair a way as we can do it, and I'm willing to live with the results. If there was one that I ranked highly, but everyone else thought it was low, or vice versa, it kind of is what it is. I am seeing a lot of consistency, though. There's not, like, that's that's probably the most extreme example that I see where one person had it near the bottom or the bottom, and all the rest of it had in the top three. A lot of the other ones, it's fairly consistent. You know, you look at QM number 4, quality of life measures number 4. It's 2, 2, 1, 2, 4. So it's a top 5 for everybody. So, all right. Anything jump out? Any questions, comments? I know we're all kind of just digesting this, so it may just take a minute to. Michelle, were there any that were kind of already underway that you
Yes.
felt like staff had, hey, we're making really good progress on this, but all of a sudden now you look at it and it's like, hey, the commission's, it's ranked, it's pretty low, and so
It's a very
now
fabulous
need some-
question. Yeah, it's a very appropriate question. I found it interesting on the quality of life measures. You know, the top 3 are right there for you, but the AOB site we are talking about today, again, but it didn't kind of fall in. It's the lowest ranked one in that category. But again, that's for the long range plan.
yeah.
Today we're speaking about short term. But that's one in particular that has been underway for quite a while. But when you look at it in the ranking, it says another story. So.
Okay. Were there any that were ranked highly that the staff has feasibility concerns with, where you say, hey, commission is saying this is a top priority, but we really don't know where to start even biting at the apple on that one? Is there anything that?
I'd say for me, just the most challenging one, and I'm real excited for the challenge, is developing the clear metrics for the quality of life, that number 1 in quality of life measures. I think that one, again, I'm really curious to see how we quantify some of those things.
Yeah. I'm super excited about that one. I'm glad that one is a top priority. I'm sure I've provided you all, I think I provided the commission, the city slightly to our southwest, I guess it would be, that has what I think are the best ones I've seen. They're not perfect, but it's a really, really good start. If we were able to even get 80% of what they had or 50% of what they had as a start, I think it would be more data than we've ever dealt with. So,
Yeah, so finding those,
yeah.
folks that have paved the way would be, I think, from a staff perspective, helpful.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I got,
Go ahead.
I mean, I may be off in the weeds here, so
No, go-
stop me if I am. But,
Go ahead.
one of the ones I struggled with, and I want to clarify, is under number 2, quality of life measures, QM5, says to develop programs to support local. It says develop programs to support local businesses and or live where you work programs. So I'm not particularly interested in that specific thing. It has has a place in our community. But that was the closest I can find to dealing with the issues that small business owners face and the challenges they face in the community. So there really was nothing that addressed that, and that's the only thing that came closest. So while we love to say we love New Smyrna, the small business, the eclecticness of it, we're constantly putting in development regulations that essentially make it impossible, financially impossible, for small business to be able to get started and start thriving, because very rarely do small businesses have the financial backing. So while we say at one breath we like this, we're not supporting that indirectly, and I just wanted to make that clear, because it's not something that I would expect people who are not a small business owner or have had to deal with the regulations with limited budgets would know, and that's just something that I want to make sure the commission is aware of, and something I kind of harped on. So I rated that number 1 simply because that was the closest I can find.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What if we can let's just drill in on that for a minute. We're not going to solve it today, but I agree with you. I mean, I think we have kind of attacked it in some ways. We created the position, Carmen's position, and that was to me, that was the whole point of that position, was to help. You know, if you've got someone, so we got Joel over at Thai Mango. He's moving his business from Canal Street to US 1 for strategic purposes, financial purposes, etc. He's upgrading a building that's been vacant now for a long time, bringing a new life to it, hopefully, and new traffic to that area, so that could be good for surrounding businesses even. So we created this position that ideally was meant to kind of work hand in hand with folks as they do those kind of things and cut through some of that red tape, but more importantly, to help even us understand and bring back and report back to us and say, hey, this is the kind of stuff that the small business community is dealing with. Because I do hear those stories from my small business owners. We had this advisory, not that you hate to form a committee for everything, right? It's the way government works. But we have the Economic Development Advisory Board that I think has struggled to find what's their place in this world. We've actually got some pretty talented people on it at the moment. We always have, but I know some that are on there now. So I wonder if we could even take something like that and say this, that's kind of their purpose, is to help us, maybe be, understand the impact of some of the stuff we're talking about, or hear some of the stories from small business community. They can really get in the weeds with them and then help develop recommendations to say, okay, we get what you're trying to do. Like, I've always said, I'm okay with high standards as long as we're easy to work with. Businesses can navigate regulations if it's not a moving target, if they're known, etc. Not that they should be so high, but you're used to operating with rules when you're in business. But perhaps there are things like the changes we made on US 1 that you brought forward. Like, that's the only reason he was able to make that change, is because we made those rule changes we did, which is now revitalizing part of US 1. So ideas like that are going to have to come from somewhere, and I don't. So.
No, I get it. I agree. And the first part is acknowledging there's an issue. And, when you go through the planning department, the building department, so much of what they deal with is geared towards big development. You get to bring in the Zevco and the engineering company, you hire the Glen Storage. But when the small guy comes in, and that's where Carmen is supposed to play a role. But the other area that isn't as easy to fix and deal with is, for example, 15 years ago now, I spent just over $200,000 just putting in stormwater retention underneath the concrete. That was 15 years ago. When we talk about making business, so that in itself was just an incredible cost that most people can't understand or appreciate to a small business. When we talk about doing a Class 2 stormwater, upgrading where we need to go with our stormwater, that is great. That's fantastic. Absolutely. We'd love to make the water quality much better with our stormwater. But what is that going to do to that $200,000? That makes it significantly more expensive. So while we're sitting around doing something that is dealing with the water quality issues, sounds great. Mm-hmm. But the only one who's going to be able to afford that is Starbucks. Yeah. So if we want to be able to be an artist-type community, those are the kind of issues that we need to be aware of when we're making policy decisions and how it affects the small business. So, I'm more than happy to meet or, attend some EDAB board meetings or work with staff to help facilitate where those problems come from.
Okay.
So, Michelle, it says pending is awaiting direction for staff to proceed. Is that direction from us, or?
So, the status hasn't changed, I'd say, since we met back in December.
Okay.
So I think that's the answer. Yes, it's pending. Let us get through some of these priority tasks. And now that, if we agree that what we have here today is now the marching orders, staff will work internally to start putting schedules to these priority ones, with the goal to start releasing action
Okay.
So yes, I'd call pending at today's date, waiting for commission direction on the priorities.
Okay.
So if the outcome of today, Khaled, Michelle, Brian, was to say, yep, we like this, there's maybe a few other things we can tackle, which may not rise to a strategic level, if you will, but certainly some, we can continue to engage in. I think Commissioner McGurk's point's well made. But for the whole, we say, yep, this is it, we're all comfortable with this, let's move forward. Everything in green we'd like to move forward with. Are we choosing everything in green, or are we choosing just the number ones? Like what kind of a capacity level are we running with? Are any of these that you look at and you say, hey, that's a number one, but it's going to take the place of like 3 other number ones because it's just so intense and labor intense? Or are there some that you say, hey, it's a number 3 priority, but it's a quick kill. Like we can knock that out. I can just send one person to go do that and get it done. Walk me through like what else do you need from this on this?
Yeah.
Do we need to pare it down at all, or are we
And
good?
that was my next move is, and I know that we have developed the ranking on 1, 2, and 3, but I was looking for the commission to give us, even on these items, which is I think they're probably 10 items or so, even to take those items and put them on a priority list as well. From the commission standpoint. So this way it gives staff the idea of, which item has more priority than the others. As soon as you develop and you approve this list, we'll provide an action plan and a schedule for each item. So this way you have it and the staff has it, and then we could from there work as progressively as possible. So hopefully out of this meeting, what I'm hoping is that you could look at this list, agree on the items that you have ranked, and then even have a priority on the ones that you selected. And so that's the goal, if it's possible.
Okay. Take in just communication and trust, CT1 and CT9. To me, those are more specific commission workshop sessions on these identified strategic topics. That's not really a lift. There's kind of, that's saying for some of these we may need to have an additional workshop. Like that's not hours and hours of staff time to go to prepare. Meaning that one's contingent on the rest. Take number CT9, measure and document community participation. Like that from a level of effort. Is that a high level of effort item, or is that kind of a,
Whatever you choose.
what do you
I
think
don't
that
we have
entails? What's that?
I said whatever you choose on which one you want. I mean, that would be fine.
If I could jump in, just
Yeah.
what we've said for that particular item, we were going to track it again before the priority. It's tied to the social media reporting. There was another item in here that says, let's see how active folks are in our social media world,
CT8, yeah.
as well as a benchmarking survey. So this one tried to capture like a couple other CT goals inside. We were kind of duplicating efforts.
Yes.
We're trying to catch it all. So to answer your question, I think the output to crossing this off the list would really be seeing a monthly social media report, and then this benchmarking survey that we also said was a priority.
Yeah.
So it's kind of they're very interrelated, but
Yeah.
those would be in my mind the outputs.
I guess what I'm driving at is to me, as we sit and try to look at, okay, now we're actually going to go start doing some of these, hopefully. That one, a lot of these are going to probably fall, there's a lot of land development stuff. So Brian's team, is going to get a lot. There's going to be a few that are hopefully some of these quality of life measures, like that's kind of this new category. I don't know who's going to run with that. But then like that measure and document community participation, that's probably like a Phil thing, like because most of that's social media, et cetera. So, I don't know how many others on this list are on his plate. And so
Right.
is that something that you get where I'm going with that?
Yes,
Like, how much of this can
yeah, and that's an important comment there. So that's when you give it back to us and we try to do the action plan on each item, I think that's going to tell us, what's currently on our plate right now.
Yeah,
And not only that, but you have the daily activities that comes in along. So
right.
we could come back and say, hey, this item we have so much on the plate that this might take a longer time, or we might have to maybe hire a consultant. So that's the goal when we do the action plan. We get deep into each item and then look at the scheduling, the needs that you need.
Yeah. Okay.
So is it the goal to focus on the 1s and 2s and 3s in every group going forward? Because
Yeah.
in the first one, the CT1, it's already underway. It seems to be an easier thing to do. So should there be a 3 there so that we
Right.
can identify the
so
next?
I think, just for me, the specific workshop sessions, again, I kind of hear that being talked like this fluid thing. I think maybe the discussion for that item could be, is it fluid, or should we go ahead and calendar now these, holding spots and dates for these sessions and just have them on the calendar? I know I'd look to Kelly, and call it for some of that, but if everybody agrees it's this fluid item, then sure, it can kind of be checked off the list that we know we're going to continue to
Yeah.
do that. But if there's a real action for somebody to go behind and find dates, coordinate it, schedule it, calendar it, get it on the city website, that's a whole host of other tasks.
Gotcha.
So let's say, in communication and trust, we knock out the 2 1s and the 2. We get them done, completed. Is it the intent to go through and complete all the rest of these tasks in the other, before we pick a 3 or a 4?
Oh, I see what
Are you
you're
talking
Under
saying.
that-
about completing the task in the specific item or the specific task in the other items? Which one are you talking about?
I think I hear you, Randy. If total, if we just take them out of their categories for a minute, there's like 15 or 16 items right now that
Right.
are a top 1, 2, or 3. Are we looking at them as ranking 1 through 15 now, or are we looking at them in their categories
Yeah.
still and trying to divide, the focus a little bit? I that's for us to decide, I'd say. What's the
Yeah.
best way to handle it?
I think what he's saying is, once we finish the top 3 in communication and trust, do we go to number 4 in communication and trust versus getting all the other top 1 through 3s done?
Well, and that's what I was trying to. If you have, say, 15 right now, that total out of all the categories, and say, my goal is to go in and finish those.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go in and finish this one on, say, on the communication and trust, and say it was number 1, and then you're going to go to number 2, that's going to take the priority out of the other ones.
Right.
So I think what we need to do is concentrate on the ones that they are top priority out of the whole entire
Yeah.
list.
Right.
And then if you have time, then you could go in and go
Agreed.
that way.
Yeah.
But I'd like it to be a little fluid, because some of these things may involve people who once they've completed a task, don't have any other task in the entire list.
That's what I was
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
And that would give them, they could start on number 3 or number 4 or something like that. Is kind of my idea. I don't want everything just to stop with the top
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
and we don't do any more until the top 15 is done, when we have staff that maybe do have the time to maybe look at something else that's not already assigned to them.
And
if you-
Commissioner Hartman, I mean, we will do that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, I mean, if we only have the staff member specifically for that specific priority,
Right.
and say they're done with it, and they're not participating in any other priorities, we'll jump into the other one.
Okay. Yeah.
But the thing is, I just don't want to lose the concentration on, here's the 15 that it's a commission priority, do that. And if you have time, and you have the availability of the staff to
Right.
get on the other ones. And then my goal is to probably update the strategic plan on probably the second meeting of every commission meeting.
Right.
So give you an update, and maybe you want to say, hey, you know what? This specific item in communication and trust, we didn't rank it high, but based on the time right now, we want you to do something on it.
Right.
So we could adjust as we go, but I think we need to establish the first priorities first.
Yep.
Thank you, Kelly. So I think it is, I think those two are a top for me. Under growth management, number GM2, update the land development code. I think that's a top priority because that one, if we do that, it will apply to the westerly development, which we talked about in number 4. And then under transportation and circulation, number TC 1.2, identify opportunities for new local streets and sidewalks and bicycle enhancements. Actually, that's not the one that I thought it was. I was thinking of the one, actually it's 1.3 that I was thinking, but that didn't actually rise to the, that didn't make the list. All right. So, yeah, sorry, I thought 1.2 was actually 1.3, so it's interesting. Where did I rank that as? That's my fault it didn't make the list. I ranked it lowest of
Good job,
everything.
Mayor. I think Mike and I looks like we represented in that one.
Yeah. Can I change my score? So anyway, if I start there, I would say those are kind of my top priorities. Obviously, I'd love to do everything on the list tomorrow, but if I had to just start assigning, I would love to get these things done or make serious progress on in 2021. If we do those items, I'm pretty happy.
I agree. I don't have a problem with anything you said. I missed what you picked for environmental and resiliency.
So I didn't pick any out of that item. It's not that I don't care about any of those. I think we've done a lot of those. ER2 would have been the one I would have picked, which is the top priority. I guess I was kind of thinking it would fall under GM2, if we're already looking at the LDR type stuff. Like, to me, that kind of all goes together.
Yeah.
So I was kind of trying to catch a freebie there.
So, just that discussion, I don't disagree with it, but one of my pet peeves is we spend so much energy, each community locally, on something like stormwater.
Yes.
To help the health of the lagoon. However, if we took all that energy and harnessed it to deal with best management practices in agriculture in the state of Florida by
Yep.
lobbying our state representatives, we're talking about massive progress towards water quality and lagoon health, because they're the ones dumping tons of nutrients.
Yep.
They're the ones who create all that issue. So it's kind of like you can water consumption, same concept. 3% of water consumption is showers and toilets out of 100, 3% out of 100%. So we can all start clicking our shower heads off, or we can all start using low flush toilets. But even if we cut that in half, that barely moves the needle.
Yeah.
Agriculture, on the other hand, uses 60 to 80%
Yep.
of all water consumption in the state. So if you had best practices put onto agriculture, having the needle, even 10%, would far exceed anything we can do on the local level by low flush toilets, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I look at the same thing. While, yeah, we need local policies, we're kind of shooting a rowboat while the battleship passes us on the backside.
Yep.
So I don't have any issue with what you said, and I had no problem with you moving number 9 to, is really pursue opportunities for local street network connections and transportation. Every day I drive around town, picking up my kids, taking them to school, all kinds of different things. And I'm watching in areas that never were a problem, constantly have a problem due to really no turn lanes. Aside from making connections like Colony Park, which were amazing for us locals, it amazes me how, if we don't get ahead of the issue of local road networks, adding turn lanes at many intersections. I mean, the whole north part of the city uses Wayne Avenue, Halleck, that kind of area to get out to 44, and we're already backing up. At 4:20 in the afternoon yesterday, I had 11 cars going east on Wayne Avenue over US 1. So the traffic turning, heading west to turn south onto US 1 didn't make the light because there was so much traffic. And I can tell you historically that has never been the case. If you had one or two cars, it'd be amazing. So we have a lot of situations like that in the city where we can just improve the quality of life of locals moving around and finding ways to get out of the congested areas. So to me, that would be should be a number one under the number 5, transportation and circulation.
Yeah, and I have to wonder honestly if I made the same mistake when I was scoring these, because I see I had 1.2, the local street, sidewalk, and bicycle enhancements. I had that as 3, and this is 9. I almost feel like I made the same. I think I read that one and thought it's the local road network, not the sidewalk. So we'll come back to that.
So specifically on that one, the events of Tuesday night kind of bring that thing to a head, where we now have identified a small subdivision that has a limited access. So, to create some kind of connectivity for those types of neighborhoods, where we're not pigeonholed by the railroad tracks, or 44 or something like that. To me, it kind of is it's more important to me now that I'm aware of that than it was when I did the survey.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with the way everything is ranked, except for that one. I think, that should be we should move that up somehow, or.
Okay. I wanted to come back to one thing, Commissioner McGurk. I think you're spot on. To me, a lot of the stuff we do under environmental and resiliency, I'll just call it like it is. I think that it's feel-good measures, but are we truly moving the needle? There's also a ton of what I feel like is anecdotal, and that's why, to me, the metrics are the most important thing. And so the first thing I'd ask is, how do you measure the health of the lagoon? I guarantee you someone has done it. Like, there's some science that's out there that can tell you measure grass bed density and some of these other things, and then we start actually tracking that and looking at some of these other things and say, does the stormwater management, is that truly what's driving the health of the, if we want to move that needle, whatever that metric is that we're now monitoring, if we want to move it, is this the way to do it? And the reality is, I think fertilizer runoff is like the number one thing. Like, we spend so much time and money on septics and talking about all that, but the data, I think, shows that if it's all the fertilization, and ironically I drive by and there's some, we're fertilizing today as I walk in right here next to the lagoon, which is fine. People want their turf, but it's those kind of changes that would probably move the needle. But right now we're operating in this anecdotal space, and so that's where, to me, a lot of the efforts we've spent in this environmental resiliency are feel-good measures. They do feel good, but are we really moving the needle? So.
Russ, just to touch on that stormwater. The requirement from the St. John's permit standpoint today, it's way a lot different than what it was 20 years ago in terms of the treatment that you do. But you touch on, you have the fertilizing, the septic tanks. Those are probably more major points than the actual stormwater, because right now, if you want to get a permit from the St. John's, you have to go through so strict requirements in terms of the water treatment that you have to do.
So they're getting ahead of us on that anyway, so.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Hartman, did you have anything that I took a stab at laying out anything that I missed that you felt like should be? You comment on the one, we'll come back to that one, but any others that?
No, I'm it was the consensus of the 5 of us, so I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I am happy to see that a lot of these are either underway or have some kind of a funding set aside for them, and they're pending. So my question was, I guess you're just waiting for us to say, move forward with that project or this project, report back, and then we can update the strategy.
Okay. Commissioner Colodi, you've been silent this morning.
Well, if you go over the rankings, it's clear I have a different way of viewing the government, as my rankings are different than most other people. Based on my many years of experience, both here and elsewhere, I find it's, and obviously we're making a big stab at trying to prioritize things and get things in order. We boiled down a list from all our resiliency meetings into a couple items. Now we're trying to boil it down even farther. It's really not possible to put governing onto a checklist, and that seems to be what we're doing here. I'm not complaining. I'm not debating any of the rankings. I'm just going to continue to bring up items that I feel are important to our whole community that go beyond this list. You take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories we have. Just based on my hearing the discussions here, should they be weighted? Should quality of life be rated higher than growth management? So on and so forth. It seems to me we're getting into a little bit of management. Whatever the commission decides, I certainly will support and participate in.
Yeah, and your point's well made, and certainly you can't govern by checklist, and I would say, yeah, I think that the challenge is we're at a point, we're a growing city, and we've got things that we want to see done differently. We've got challenges related to growth. We've got opportunities to pursue because we're a vibrant city. That creates some opportunities. So I think that the source, the origins of this are. The origins of this are, we would all love to do all of these things plus probably 10 others. And so if we keep just bringing those up every Tuesday, staff is running in a million different directions trying to push 100 different, strategic items forward all at once. And so we're not seeing the big push and kind of rallying around some things. And we're struggling with, you bring it up this Tuesday, well, I bring up something next Tuesday. All right, it's the same 5 people that are going to go work. Do they start on your issue or the one that I brought up, or the 4 other ones that were brought up the past 3 meetings? And so that's what this is trying to do, is take, we've got some new faces on the commission. We've got, some long-serving folks that have a different set of problems that they've analyzed. And so this is trying to take all that and condense it down and say there's finite resources, budget, staff time, our time, and so what do we want to try to prioritize out of those? It's certainly not saying that if tomorrow something like a COVID or even just a community issue comes up, that we're not going to ever talk about that or bring something up, live at the dais ever again. I mean, that's never how we. It's not like we can do this, but all right, we're done meeting for the year. Call us when you're finished with all these items, and we'll tell you the next 10 to work on. So I get where you're coming from, but I don't see it as that. I see it as really staff, trying to give staff some direction of these are all priorities, but these are this 5's top priorities, and it's not any one of our top priorities. I mean, if you look through this list, there's in every case, it's no top priority for any one person that got every top spot. So it's a nice blending, I think, of what we all have. So,
Mayor, if I
sure.
may add something. Mike, it's not that I disagree with you. I think you make a great point. But one of the reasons we're here is because the Citizens for Smart Growth, Coalition Density Group, these organizations wanted to task us with dealing with these issues that they felt we weren't dealing with. So a lot of this is a culmination out of a lot of the people affiliated with these groups demanding that they wanted answers and responses to these kinds of issues, some kind of direction. So that's a big part of how this list has been comprised. So a lot of what we're doing, when you say micromanaging, I agree with you, but a lot of that has to do with the voices that we've heard from the community saying what they're not happy about. So this is part of the attempt to be able to deal with those concerns.
Pardon the interruption. There's a few people at home listening, having trouble hearing. If you could just remember to speak into your mics,
Okay.
that might help.
Can't get any closer.
All right. And the term micromanaging has been used. To me, there's a difference in micromanaging and managing. I mean, our job is to set the strategic direction. To me, I think we do this. This doesn't dig to the level of micromanaging for me, because most of these items are truly, these are large strategic objectives that we've never done. The community, the metrics, like that's something we've never tackled before, we've never done in this community. And so it's a strategic objective that we're trying to accomplish. And so that doesn't, I think we do more micromanaging on a random Tuesday night than we are right here today. So if we want to talk about the micromanaging, we spent 20 minutes debating pavers in a right-of-way the other night. Like, that's not a board-level decision to me. And so this is the experience that I've had with governing boards, managing boards, in both, corporation settings and government settings. These are the type of things, we should spend more time doing this kind of stuff, setting these clear, broad directions, and all this other minutia is, I'm no expert in most of that stuff. We're relying on the expertise of our, I have engineers on staff. I'm not an engineer. Some of us are, but I'm not. So, I'm a budget guy though, but I don't try to do the budget for our team. I let them tell us and give their expertise, and then so anyway, so to me this is more strategic and doesn't fall to the level of micromanagement.
And Mayor, not only that, but I think what it does, it makes us more proactive than reactive when we have a list like this, that you could actually do the planning side of it, the strategic plan side of it. Right now, I mean, if I don't have this, I'm reactive to the request that I receive, and it just makes us, it doesn't make us effective. So having this list, and this list, just as a reminder, this list was developed from the CCR, from the community meetings, and then the commission workshop. So this was as a result of these three groups that this list was developed. So hopefully, and we're hoping, the staff is anxious to have the strategic planning items on the priority list, that we could actually move forward and get them done.
Yeah.
Because that's the most satisfying aspect of the job, is just to see something is accomplished. And so that's what we're looking for.
And what, I think in an ideal world, because we've all talked about, there's a lot of things that come up on a random Tuesday, and we say, we need to do this, we should do this, and staff kind of nods and says, okay, we'll work on that. But to me, what this process also gives us is, it gives staff the ability to say, hey, here's all the stuff we're working on from a top priority standpoint, and there's always the day-to-day stuff. I mean, I got a phone call this morning I got to talk to Colin about and figure out. So there's all the day-to-day stuff, but this says, okay, these are the strategic priorities, and so if something comes up on a random Tuesday night, it may replace every single thing on this list, but that's a conversation. That's where Colin can then come back to us and say, okay, which of these items, like we're working on these 10 things that we all agreed were the top priorities, which of those do you want to press the pause button on so that I can redirect those staff to work on this? And that's the process. I mean, I've sat in those meetings. I've been the staff that was redeployed most of the time, where I'm sitting there going, okay, I can't work on 5 different things, so you tell me which 3 you want me to tackle, and I'll go at it 110%. And so that's the direction we're giving, and that's what we're empowering staff to be able to do, is to say, hey, here's our capacity, here's how we've deployed that capacity, whether that be staff time or budget. And so if you want us to tackle these things, let's put it to the list, and then if we need to, go through this process again. Michelle, do you have enough? Did we get enough out of this?
If I could,
Sure.
Again, I'm using the app that's available for all to see. The notes for going forward, I just want to make sure I got it right, so correct me if I'm wrong. We reviewed the ranking results. The go forward next steps is focused action and schedules with the staff leader on all priority number 1 items first. Item 2 and 3 would follow. And then we'll continue to be flexible. We'll reevaluate, reprioritize as progress is made. And we will also give updates on this progress each month.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that in quality of life measures, I would think 1 and 2 in that particular one are really linked. I mean, I think those really are just, they should be on one line to me, because they're all the same. It's all metrics. And then a couple, like so in growth management, if I had to pick, I would say start with GM2, because GM4 is linked to GM2. Meaning if we update our LDRs and our zonings, et cetera, that's going to apply to the Western development and the rest of the city. So we kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
So just
We're not killing any birds. Just
on the metrics, one, the only reason they're split out is to your point of the public safety data is available. It's kind of just finding a different way to share it.
yeah,
Whereas the metrics on the quality of life is still to be developed, and it might take a while longer to produce it. So
Gotcha.
one might get ahead of the other, and I agree they should be published together, but if we have one, we should just go ahead and get it out there and then let the other one come
Yeah.
with it when we
Okay.
get there.
all right.
Okay, and I think that's all I have, other than just, again, one more plug for you guys on the app. If you just want to remember this exists. You don't have to go online to get to this data. Please remember to log in and take a look at what we looked at today. So again, it'll look different. There's the priority 1 items, and you can scroll through 2, 3, and then just the rest of the categories as holding places for the rest of the items.
Okay.
And then we have the completed category. As they get complete, we'll move them there.
And if you send it to me, I missed it and don't remember it, but
Sure.
you'll just send us a link to that app and
Yeah, I'll
the login
definitely-
and everything?
Yep.
Okay. And is that something that there's a public-facing side of this as well, right? That may
Right,
not have
so
every detail, but
it's free
Yep.
for read-only. As far as the public rolling out, we have one more meeting this week with the vendor on how we can get them into this,
Yeah.
platform. We can't invite everybody. We're
Right.
trying to get it where it's an easy button on our website. They click and then they log in
yeah,
with their own username and password to this particular project and can see just like we all can.
yeah.
Um,
If there's significant cost on that, or really any cost, I don't think it's going to be used enough to make it worth any cost. I think the people that would probably log into that app are sitting right here in this room, and so I'm happy to just hand them my phone and let them scroll through it, so I just think there's very, very few people, so I wouldn't say it's worth substantial cost. But
Right, and I don't
keep that in
think there
mind.
is a cost.
Yeah,
It's just more
hopefully
of
it would be free,
an access and how to create that connection to our website.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda, if everyone is good with that, seeing we are, is the AOB site, which we've established is not a priority, so we can skip. No, I'm just kidding.
This is our probably number 7th, 8th time of trying to come up with a plan for the AOB site. So we have worked with Commissioner Colodi on a conceptual plan for the site. This is probably the latest version that we have in terms of the improvement in the AOB site. So Michelle will go over some of these items that we have incorporated into the new plan, and then we'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay.
Sure, so again, Commissioner Colodi, feel free to jump in whenever. Commissioner Colodi did a great CAD file draft, and met with Colin and I just took that and kind of cartoonized it, if you will, just to kind of see things easier instead of looking at a AutoCAD file. But the idea being the fence that's out there today continues to be this separation on the site. We proposed shifting it slightly north to gain some more recreation space, flipping the parking that's currently on that side of the water's edge to get the Marine Discovery folks slightly closer to the dock that's out there, which again would create almost a half acre or more of recreation space that vehicles, can't get to. But on the northern edge, they're creating 64 plus or minus trailer stalls. But and the way we get there is eliminating one of the entryways into that site. You know, when you think about these two properties as one, there's no need for 3 different entry points. That kind of breaks the site up. So if we eliminate that middle one, we can create quite a long row here of spots along the north, and then a center aisle as well. There was a lot of also additional thought on standard vehicles and how frequent they also come and meet folks to join them on a boat adventure. So providing approximately 40 plus spots for them, as well as a sidewalk connection along the water's edge to help with folks getting to the available restrooms at the boat ramp, instead of, you know, walking across the site through the parking lot. You know, just some landscaping improvements after we come in here and do this. It's more or less proposed to be a shell, natural approach, not, you know, poured asphalt that's extremely long term. We definitely have to pour the handicap parking stalls, but other than that, railroad ties and, you know, trying our best to define where those parking spaces are meant to be to create some control on the site.
Okay.
Commissioner Colodi, anything I may have missed?
Excuse me?
Is there anything I may have missed?
No. First time I'm looking at this, it looks very nice. Basically what this is a plan to put some order out there and spend basically a minimal amount of money, service the boating needs from people who are not from here, and to allow it to continue to be used by our residents, is what it is. It's one of these issues that's been beaten to death for years.
Yep.
And as we're saying with our strategic plan, let's get some stuff done.
Yep.
Although it doesn't have any priority for most people, I would like to see it finished.
Okay. I'm not a part of the boating community, mainly because I don't have any friends with boats. And I've been told that's the best way to get into the boating community. Yeah. So, but any concerns, and Jason, you may know the best, or I don't know if anybody else is, or even in the audience, but any concerns with that third entrance from a, you know, I know navigating a trailer through a tight spot, I have done that, not with a boat on it, but just in general. Is any concerns with that from that middle entrance standpoint? It makes logical sense to me, but I just want to make sure we're not missing something that the boating community is going to cry foul on.
By eliminating it?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a...
Engineers are good at putting a radius on something, which they assure you. But that has proven to be challenging. Certainly, the swoop site had a problem with some radius turning and stuff. So I think that before we can do any work, we need to make sure that works.
Yeah.
Just to speak to that, the radiuses in the driveways that we've shown meet or exceed all those that are out there now in the improved paved site, so I don't expect any problems. One of the most important issues on traffic control and accidents is to minimize the points of contact.
Yeah.
So the third entrance that's out there now, to lose that will go to both goals. It'll provide safe means in and out, cut down on conflicts with the ongoing traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to speak to the details. I think we got to be careful that we don't create a traffic jam for people trying to get out. But my only concern with this is, in my opinion, we're committing too much of the property to boat trailer park. Not that I won't go along with it. That's just my personal opinion.
I can address that.
Go
I would prefer to have less boat trailers. It's that the need is kind of obvious. I asked it a couple times a day, and I think this is a good compromise between the two. One of the things I don't want to see is us expanding permanent parking. For the most part, You go past there no matter what season during the week, and right now you see a lot of grass, and that's what I would like to continue to see out there.
With it all looks green there, but one thing I've learned in this role is that you see a picture and then you see the actual item, and the two can be wildly different. So are the actual trailers? You mentioned shell, so obviously all of the
Sure. So the drive aisle, we would maintain the first 50 or 60 feet of asphalt
Yeah.
that's out there today, so folks can get in on
Right.
a nice paved
Yep.
surface
okay.
and or out. And then certainly after that, that's when, crushed concrete. We talked about shell, but then as far as providing a better stabilized material, we would consider maybe a 6-inch crushed concrete surface, and that would be, again, the drive aisle around these grass medians. This would all be sod. So they'd be parking again in
Okay.
grass that's out there today.
Kind of like it is today, yeah.
On the northern end, we would try to, place, as I said, 38 railroad ties, trying to show that they shouldn't continue any further north past that line.
Okay.
There wouldn't be any striping on the ground or ways of further defining the stalls other than kind of the ground level railroad tie
Okay.
approach on the north end. This middle section wouldn't have any markings. It would just be understood that that's available, and once one boat parked properly, hopefully the rest would follow.
Yeah.
I know that's not the right
Yeah.
assumption to make, but might take a minute to learn, or signage. I'd look to Khalid for any other thoughts on how to best order the middle section. I think the northern part might be easier to control.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I would also add is during our really large overflow event last year, there was 82 passenger cars parked out there. This provides a lot of space for people who drive there without boat trailers.
Yeah.
And those spaces can also be used by people who are there for the recreational activities along the water itself.
So I realize you're saying that people are backing in, they're pulling in and then backing out with their trailers to leave the stall.
Oh, that's a good point.
Is that's what I'm seeing?
That would be the intent on the northern side, sure. Yeah, that's, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
Commissioner Colodi. They couldn't pull forward and then continue their way out. They would have to back out.
I don't think that'll work.
That's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not good with a trailer. I'll be the first one to admit. But I think there's a lot of people who are a lot worse than me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think you're gonna have a lot of jackknife trailers and people.
Yep.
I have a concern with that.
That's a really good point.
Okay.
My goal would be functionality before we try to.
Okay, just one thing you got to remember is all the parking spaces we have over there now are not drive-through spaces.
But they're using much more of the space overall.
Not necessarily. The parking spaces that are shown in this plan are the exact same size as the spaces on the paved portion.
Yeah, but they're able to back out more straight than coming into like a normal parking spot. I mean, there's
Exact
almost a
same.
90-degree angle.
This is the exact same driveway and aisle dimensions that we have now
Where? I'm not looking at something.
on the
that-
paved portion of this site. When you look at the paved portion of the site now, those are double-stacked rows. They're not drive-throughs.
Okay, wait, you got off it, so I can't, I'd like to, where's that at?
Oh, sorry. Didn't know you were looking at it. Sorry. I was going to take you to Google Earth.
So
Fly
where
around a little
is where do they pull in at a 90-degree angle existing and back out at that 90-degree
Right in
angle?
here.
Right there?
If somebody were, if they came in and this was the only one open and the one beside it was already gone, they'd have to pull in. And then this guy was still here when this guy left, he'd have to back out.
Yeah, so you're showing me, so I'm seeing two things. I'm seeing people using the full stall, but I am seeing on the top, just below that island, no, right there. Yeah, go right in there, those cars. Those trailers look like they parked to back out at a 90-degree angle if someone was in front of them. The two middle look like they're taking up the
whole-
two spaces.
Yeah.
So they can pull in and pull out forward. So if what I'm hearing is you can pull in at a 90-degree angle with those 1, 2, 3 cars above, they're going to back. In this case, it looks like they can pull out, but if they pulled in to back out that 90-degree angle, that's great. But the other thing I question is, we got a lot of people with trucks, and you got a 30-foot boat. You're going to have 35-foot trailer on a 18-foot truck. So if you're telling me that those work, we're not just talking about someone with a little 18-foot flats boat being pulled by a Toyota Tacoma. So if they work, that's great. I caution, we did all this at the swoop site, and there are a lot of problems. So I'm constantly told the engineering works, and then we see where it doesn't. So just a heads up.
Michelle, what's the width of the aisle between the two opposite spaces?
This width from here?
No, but on the aisle itself, between where it says
Right here?
64, 12 by 55?
Yeah.
Yep, right there.
I'd have to open it and remeasure it. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Commissioner Clody?
It's a 30-foot wide aisle, the same as the existing aisles and the existing paved area. The stall width's 12 feet. I do have a trailer. They are a pain in the neck. I don't have a boat trailer anymore, but it's certainly doable. And once again, the problems that you're possibly speaking of may come during our most high impact times and during the what would be 80 to 85% of the time. You're not going to have people pulling in those spaces and needing to back out. I just want to say that we've been going over this for a long period of time. We could debate the engineering things forever. I would prefer to take the approach, the division of lands between parking and recreation, come to some decision on that, and leave it to our staff to design it.
All right, so I can tell you, go back to that, Michelle. I can tell you where my friends and neighbors have a problem on the swoop site. So when you come in, you top of the yes. So when they come in and make that first right turn, yes, and then trying to make that one. That's that second one. Nope, up a little, right there. That is almost impossible for the bigger trucks and trailers. And we did something because the other challenging spot was those two spots, those two right turns. The first one's easier. The second one is very difficult. And so there are trailers that get hung up. So the engineering says that's fine, but by practice, it's a challenge for the bigger trucks and trailers.
Leave it to staff to discuss that and correct it. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Can you go back to the Google Street, the satellite view you're in now, but of the North Causeway? Go back to the North Causeway.
Yes, sir. Hold on.
And so kind of go back to the area we're talking about.
On the boat ramp side? Or
Yeah,
the
no,
AOB?
this side, yeah. And I don't know, are you still in like the 3D view? I think got messed up now.
It's hard to see, I know.
So the fencing there, will basically stay about where it is. Is that?
We would propose pulling it slightly north, kind of along this
Yeah.
line, to
Okay.
get more space on the water's edge. And
Yep.
then, again, it's kind of, bisects the property in a strange
Yeah. Okay.
diagonal.
So the fencing will be in the same proximity, but actually a little more space.
Yep.
And then the same shell kind of U shape, although not necessarily a U, but you see the main, but you're eliminating that middle one
Yep,
there.
yep,
So
yep.
that would be gone,
Correct.
and that would come over. So all of that would be parking kind of all through
Through here.
there.
Correct.
Okay. And then another row down at the bottom, which also wouldn't necessarily be pull-through, because would those be right up to the fence, or would they be pull-through? Go back, yeah.
These would pull up to the fence,
Those would
Standard
pull up, but the
vehicles.
boats in the middle would be the pull-through.
correct.
In theory, it could be
Yeah.
pull-through.
Yeah, the ones up against the fence are for individual
for cars,
passenger
yeah,
cars,
yeah.
yes.
Which isn't neat. At the swoop ramp, and staff has corrected it, we added some grass parking, because I heard that. The guys were saying, hey, we can park, but there's nowhere for all the people that come to meet us to park. So we fixed that now.
So having a driveway for them to pull forward, sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to jump
go
in
ahead.
there, but on the top one, having a driveway for them to pull forward, we don't want, because that's not a good idea. Why?
That middle thing?
Well, the top one, instead of them, if they had an ability to pull out forward as opposed to backing out.
So are you
at a
saying
90 degree.
consider putting an aisle on this side too, so
Yeah,
they could
just a
come
drive
in
aisle.
and go out, or vice versa?
Yeah.
I think
I don't
these-
know if it'll fit. I don't know what it does for the flow, but at least consider that.
I think we'd have to shift the entire assembly to the south a little bit, because the property line is in this area. I'd
But you
look to
can't have a
qualify.
driveway and a right-of-way?
I don't know if we can have improvements in the DOT right of way without their approval.
Okay.
But we put normal driveways in and out on the right-of-way.
With approval.
Well,
Surely we can get approval.
sure.
So you're asking for additional driveway, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that top row doesn't have to back out at a 90-degree angle. Can we
Yeah.
make it to where they can pull out forward, which is saying we would need FDOT approval
Yeah, but,
to put that driveway lane on their right-of-way?
so let me just, so this way I could clarify that. So you have these spaces that are facing north right
Yes.
now, right?
Correct.
So you're saying is you want them to pull out and have another drive there to come out in the middle. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Now, DOT right away, I'm not sure exactly. Michelle, can you, is it possible to show what the DOT right away on this plan?
I have an old survey, if you'd like me to open it. I
Well, we
can.
can make the assumption that that's all DOT right-of-way. Let's just
Yeah.
make that assumption.
Yeah.
And then take it, the discussion from there.
Because right now, if
So
you
the-
look at the sites, some of the boats, they park in the DOT right away.
Yeah, and we're not asking for parking.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So the idea was to make it more organized, where you're not having those people parking in the DOT right away, and make it more of a delineated trailer parking spaces.
These-
But
Are we taking the, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. So are we, is the plan not to keep those up there in the DOT right-of-way?
These we got approval for when we did the boat ramp. These 9 spaces
Okay.
are in the right of way.
yeah, we have an agreement with them on those ones back there, and I think those ones on this side, I mean, they would just kind of,
Yeah. Okay, so
Line
my
item.
question is, all I'm saying is, does it make sense to be able to have them pull forward and out to exit the trailer parking spot? And if it does make sense, can we get approval for that?
Well, I'll just jump right in. If this is the direction we should be heading, is adding an aisle, then we should just take the entire thing and shift it towards the water's edge, and we'd be outside of the right of way.
We would be taking away our recreational area, and where
Right.
this plan wasn't just developed to fit the parking on the property. If you notice, there's some different variations. The idea is to save the trees that are out there now. Right now, there's a significant line of palm trees and a drainage ditch that runs along the right-of-way. You would have to take that away, which would add a lot of cost and change the whole appearance of the area. Also, if you go out there when boat trailers are parked there now, they all back into those spaces, whether we want them to or not. They back up to that right-of-way line, and then they pull out when they leave. So along the highway frontage, it's really no change from what's there now. But I don't think we should really have to worry about that. I think that it either works or it doesn't work. The staff will figure that out. I'm more interested in trying to get a division as to how we improve the property.
Well, the vision I think we all have, now that we have the details.
Do we agree with that? I know we have it, but
And I think that, I don't necessarily agree with taking more of the public space. I understand about trees, I understand about a drainage ditch. All I'm saying is, let's take a look at that to see if you can put a driveway lane to the north of those spots, simply for the ability for the average person to be able to drive a boat and trailer and not cause accidents. Because all too often, we do something, and it's supposed to work, and then we have to go back and readjust. So,
Yeah.
that's just my suggestion.
You just showed the drive, the 30-foot drive on the north side of the parking spaces, so let's see what it looks like.
So
Yeah.
I just drew it real quick, but if if that's really the way we should be headed, we can try to shift some of this, like we said. But to Commissioner Colodey's point, we would then lose that exact dimension on the other side.
So conceptually, I support this. I think Commissioner McGurk has raised some concerns that I think staff can talk through. I don't know that I would support moving it this way. I think actually I'd be more inclined to ask FDOT, unless someone tells me that's just like the hardest thing in the world to do. But we just approved a right-of-way agreement last night, so surely the FDOT can give us one. So I would say I'd like to see us do that. I think it's also important to remember that this looks great because we see all these little black lines and it looks like it's organized. But in reality, you're going to have the shell, but then in between that's really, there's not going to be that organization. Even if we do the railroad ties, it's not going to look like a parking lot, which is good in some ways. I think the challenge you run into is just human behavior. Somebody parks at a 40 or 90 degree angle in there, and all of a sudden now you lose half the parking. So, I don't know if there's a way. I've seen before in temporary parking where they've done, they have some stop that's in the ground that it's got the little like a
Like a little
fiber
flag.
things on it, something that kind of shows you the parking lanes.
Yeah.
Maybe we could, that'd be de minimis cost, so.
We looked at trying to delineate the spaces. Normally what happens when we have a shell parking lot, we do either railroad ties or landscaping timber like 8x8, and then you could put tick marks on them, and so it delineate
Yeah.
the parking space. But in this particular one, it was especially the one in the middle, because they could come in from both sides.
Yeah.
But what we could do is, the initial idea was that we will have probably one of the parking ambassadors to be there for the first month or two. I think when people get used to how to park there, maybe that will be, unless if you have somebody from, for the first time. But
Yeah.
if we could maybe put how sometimes they use the flags for delineating the utilities. So if we could just put
Yeah.
them at each space, but they
Well,
would be
I've
knocked
seen
down.
ones where it's like it's something in the ground, and then they have something on the top that's a very.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them in like national parks and stuff, and it's a thing that stays on the ground and it'll last for years.
Yeah, we could.
So
We could.
anyway, so I say this is as close to a good plan as I've seen on this, and I'm willing to move forward with it. Support moving forward with this, but challenge staff to go down there one day and put some flyers on some cars and invite folks to call you with to look at this, some actual boaters that use that ramp. I've got some guides that I'm friends with that I can would love to just sit down and say, hey, what are we missing here, since none of us use it probably as often as a lot of other people in the community do. So I don't want to have something like that where we miss something blatantly obvious that it's like, oh, that would have been simple to fix. So
Just to, as soon as you make this trailer parking, it will be difficult to take it back and use something else. So I just want to make sure that Commissioner is aware of that, so.
Yeah. And
That's
just to
why
be
we
clear,
try
we're not adding capacity, we're not adding trailer parking, we're adding order to chaos right now. It's
We'll
not
just
like
make
we're.
it more organized.
Yeah. Okay, quick time check, we're at 10:30, we, plan to go till noon, I guess we could go a little after, but I was hoping to wrap up by,
So this is then now going to be a permanent solution for the site as opposed to a temporary. And where does it fall within our strategic plan, which says long-term staffs to explore options for dockage, marina use, review the past information for the Delta Queen, access to the site, need to review the ICW. Is that all out the window now, or is this an addition to that?
We have two options. Obviously, on the list, it's not a priority list.
Right.
However, we could develop a conceptual plan. The grant cycle, we have to submit the grant application by, I think, by the end of March. So we'll develop this concept, tweak it, and then I think we have some recreational activities that we had on the south side of the property
Mm-hmm.
that we'll bring back to you probably at the next meeting or the meeting after. And if you are in line with that, we will submit to the find, and that will be the other portion of it. That would not be the whole entire site, but the south side of it. So.
Okay.
yeah, I looked at them as two separate, like,
Okay.
this is that part of the site.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
don't want the
Yeah,
second part of it to just vanish and go away.
yeah.
He's looking for the long term.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's, when you speak to a possible grant, there's some other structural things out there, like the finger piers where people get on and off the boats.
Right.
Right now are fixed, and I've seen mothers lifting their children up onto these little finger piers when the tide is out. So structural things like that, I would definitely include in the grant.
And I misspoke, we're scheduled till 1, so I feel a little better about our time now. All right, anything else on the AOB site?
Would you like for us at the next meeting just bring back the tweaked plan on this one here, or you want to just move forward?
I'll defer to you on the next meeting. From what I recall, I think we've got a few things that could be potentially time-consuming on that, so I don't know that we want to put this on that one.
I
So
could include it in my CM report too, so you
maybe-
could see
Maybe
that.
do that, and if we've got time at the end, we can talk through it. If not, we can bring it back, but at least include it if you're able to have it done by then.
But realistically, I mean, we're redoing the pathway on the North Causeway. So the company's going to be there to tear up the old asphalt for the old sidewalk and stuff like that. If we're all in agreement that we're going to move towards this, and there's asphalt that needs to be removed, maybe we can get a better price by piggybacking off of him. I mean, is that possible?
Well, normally, when they do the milling, we could ask them to that we will have the milling, and we could use the milling in those aisles if we want to. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that time, because it hadn't been out for bid yet, so I don't know what time.
no, they're actually when I mentioned at the last meeting, but I was talking to Faith after the meeting, and they want to piggyback on the county contract. They have a contract with PNS Baby.
Okay.
And I think they're getting some good prices. So Faith and Engineering, they're working on a proposal from them.
Right, so whatever that time frame is, I would hate to have them out there doing the work, and then we have to come back 3 months later and say, okay, now we need to mill up this old asphalt to do this parking area. If we're already out there, we can piggyback off
Well-
of that or kind
Well,
of.
hopefully we'll put them in conjunction with this one as well,
Okay.
because it's you got the aisles, so basically it's not much work, but if we can incorporate this work into the bike path, that would be great.
Okay,
What I would
How much asphalt are we milling? Is there asphalt we're going to be taking up off of the AOB site?
yes.
Okay.
The milling out of the bike path, Mayor.
No, I know that, but I mean, off of the AOB site, we're not really taking up much off.
I'm saying if you want
could
on
put
those
some in.
aisles,
Yeah.
we could use it, because it looks like I mean, it doesn't become an asphalt, but it looks,
No, I have that on my driveway.
$25,500 for asphalt removal. on the AOB site.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
what's in this budget.
I see. The one thing I was going to say, and I'm glad you brought it up because it reminded me, the crushed concrete, I've seen that used in some applications, and it can be dusty. Is the main kind of complaint with crushed asphalt? Is it as people come in, it kicks up a lot of dust. The millings, the asphalt millings, I've used my back driveway is asphalt millings. And in Florida, the great thing about that is they get so hot, and then they become like asphalt, but yet they're very porous. It doesn't create a lot of runoff. So do what you want, but I think that would be a better option, especially if we can use some of our own milling. So
If we can use the milling, or sometimes they have millings out of 95 and
Yeah.
other projects, so we have worked with them in the past to that we could get it sometimes for free. So
yeah,
And the only thing I would caution is weight. Use also, you got these big dually trucks coming in, so you gotta have to weigh the weight of some of these vehicles, one under the other. You don't want big ruts with
Yeah.
concrete or asphalt,
the one thing about the crushed concrete, comparing to the shell base, it gives you the density a lot quicker than the shell, and it's less maintenance. With the shell, you probably have to go out there on probably every other 2 days to grade it. So,
I'm not
But-
talking shell. I
but
would
what he
say
was talking about is the dust.
asphalt millings.
Yeah.
Crushed concrete can create a lot of dust, and it's concrete dust, so it's not great for vehicles. Versus the asphalt millings doesn't create dust. So I would between those two. Shell's not an option to me, but those two.
I mean, we could actually do a combo, put the crushed concrete on the bottom and then put a 2 or 3 inch layer of the milling, so.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
So, whatever. But in the budget, there's $25,000 for removing of the asphalt, and if we're gonna have somebody mobilized already and out there, I think
Yeah.
there
good
may
point.
be a cost savings, even though this isn't even on the priority list, so.
The only thing, Commissioner, the removal of the asphalt and the milling, two different activities, so that's different. So the milling is probably, we could use the asphalt, but if they just remove it, because it's really that asphalt on the AOB site, it's not something that it's easy to mill, because it's spread all over the place. But we'll look
Okay.
into it.
All right, we're at 10:40. I need a little break. Commissioner McGregor just took a break as well, so I'd say let's take 5. We'll come back at 10 or 7. We'll come back at 10:45. Khaled, if you're ready.
Yes. Brian is going to go over the quick review on the properties, and then we'll take any questions.
All right.
So potentially available city parcels. At the December workshop, we gave you a long list of over 100 properties. It was informative, but not particularly helpful or useful for us in really looking at what properties could we potentially sell. So we took that and narrowed it down to 29, which are on the map that's in front of you and in the packet. And then from that, really looked at 15 in particular as potential candidates for a sale. And we provided a preliminary recommendation in the staff report for each of those. So I'd like to hit the ones where we actually did recommend moving forward or exploring a possible sale. And these are all vacant properties with 2 exceptions. I'll hit those 2 up front. The first is the 2650 building, and there's a small building across the street at 2700. Based on the annex, the acquisition of property near the annex, is we feel like we're in a position to move forward with a sale of that property. We do have already had interested parties inquire and actually tour the building with an interest. So that is one we'd like to move forward with, 2650 and 2700 North Dixie. The second property, which
Would
is
monies from that go to the general fund or the building fund?
we go to the general fund.
Okay.
The The second property that we looked at, it's now vacant, is the 301 Smith Street. And this is property, it's zoned I-1 light industrial. In this case, kind of fast forwarding to our recommendation, is we'd recommend restoring the site first, and then, given its location, really holding it, and for future public use, possible sale or lease in the future, but not to move forward with a prep for sale. This may have a public purpose at some point, so restore it first and then look at our options is our recommendation on that. Any questions on those two before we?
Yes, Smith Street. We have no idea what's under the ground. We should do a phase, whatever phase we're up to, environmental assessment, and perhaps we could get a grant for that. So I would like to proceed and do that.
Commissioner Colodi, we're working on the brownfield to submit a grant for the one on Smith Street for the property that the utilities has just turned to us. And then also, if, for future, I think we have recommended twice to relocate the building maintenance facility back to maintenance op. And if we do that, then obviously you have that site along with the one that we just got back from the Utilities Commission. So we will do a brownfield grant for one site or two sites, depending on what we do with the other one.
Brian, when you say
Thank you.
When you say restore on that property, what do you mean?
That would be step one.
Okay.
Identify potential hazards, what are constraints to sale or use, clean it up, and then prepare it for some public purpose.
Okay.
So, trying to read between what you both said, until we know what we're going to do with it, I don't want the city necessarily to spend a lot of money on the site, because if we sell it, then that's the buyers, that can be the buyer's cost. But I think what you're saying is we're going to apply for a brownfield grant to be able to do some of this work, and that I'm 100% behind.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to extend a bunch of money out to something, and then 5 or 10 years later say, oh, we have this environmental survey, and someone says, well, we need a new one now. I don't want to spend money until we know what I don't want to spend a lot of money.
And the idea would not, hopefully, that the brownfield grant, it's 100%. So you might have to put out of pocket just a few dollars here and there, but not the major cost of the whatever you do.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So on that one particularly, it's no secret. At some meeting sometime back, we had the adjacent property owner approach the city, and they're interested in that property, not the whole thing necessarily. Maybe they are, I don't know, but they're interested in that for potential overflow parking or just parking in general. To me, if we don't have an immediate use for it, we could pursue a 1 year, 2 year type arrangement. Sounds like they might be willing to pursue that, and so that generates a little bit of revenue, but yet we also hold on to it in case we ever do need it. So I do agree that if we may potentially use it, then I don't want to get rid of it. But in the meantime, if I can, it looks pretty nasty right now. I mean, it looks way better. We've removed the fencing, so that helped a lot. But if we have someone willing to go in and make a few minor improvements, not paving it, not doing any of that, but just minor improvements, and use it, and we generate some revenue, I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
And that option is available because he mentioned either lease or sale.
Okay.
So whatever the commission decides to do, if they want to lease it, it's obvious. We could have either an RFP or if somebody's interested. We had presented 3 different leases back to the hospital at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were interested, but then it seemed like they backed off. So right now it's available for anyone who wants to
And
lease
I
it.
guess what I'm wondering is that something, like, I don't want to look up a year from now and it's still just sat there vacant and we've lost out on potential revenue. Do we have to do all that other stuff you just talked about before we could?
If it's only used for parking, I don't have to do anything as far as the brownfield.
Okay.
But if you're building on
Right,
it, obviously
yeah.
I have to. But for parking, I don't have to do that.
Okay.
I agree 100% with what the mayor just said. We can have the guy the barn, is looking for parking, whether it's that entity or someone else, if we have somebody who will improve the property, the aesthetics of the property, and pay us a lease while we don't know what we're going to do with the property long term, that's a no-brainer. So I would certainly like to pursue that if possible, whether it's that entity or someone else.
Yeah.
And if I recall, when they were trying to open the barn, and I think I mentioned, they asked about the lease, and I told them what we had presented to the hospital at the time in terms of the cost, and they thought that it was high. I mean, this is what we were paying for the parking lease at the church. So we'll go back to them. I mean, if they're interested, or anybody is interested, we'll probably put an RFP out.
And of course, we can't do this in private, because we can't negotiate, but something is better than nothing.
We agree.
I would be in favor of a lease up to 2 years, definitely no longer than 2 years. And the brownfield study is meant not necessarily for that particular half of what's shown on our Exhibit as C, but the other half where there are structures.
Right. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor said, as quick as possible on the lease.
And I do think, I mean, just however we can, I don't know too many other interested parties, but there may be some, if we're not allowing a structure to be built, then, I don't know how many other uses there may be for that, but I'm okay with putting it out for RFP. Let's see what the offer is. I'm not looking to make anybody a sweetheart deal by any stretch, but right now it's not we're getting zero from it, and we're having to maintain it, and, so something is better than nothing.
True. I mean, if the commission wants to, for us to put it out, we will put it out as soon as possible.
Okay. I've heard at least 3 of us that it sounds like we're in favor of that, so,
Okay.
all right.
All right, there were 4 other lots that we felt like were also good candidates for sale, and these were
Actually,
more of,
hang on, let me go back before we move off of A and B. We didn't really talk about that one.
2650.
Yeah, 2650 and 2700. I'm also okay with that recommendation if staff is saying that there's no need for that and we can put money back in the general fund that we can redeploy for other uses. I know, I have talked to some local businesses that are interested in that facility. So I would say same thing, we go out to some kind of an RFP type deal where we invite, it's tough in these kind of situations because, if we were just a commercial enterprise, we would just probably stick a, contact some kind of real estate broker, stick a for sale sign out in front of it. In this position, we get approached with some creative stuff where it's like, well, hey, we want to try to do this, but what if you took this, so I don't know how to evaluate A versus B, but I'd like to just explore our options on that.
What I was thinking is if we develop the RFP for that site is we probably have to be selective on the criteria in terms of what does whether it's a buyer or somebody's leasing, brings to the community in terms of economic development as well. So that has to be put into the criteria, because the last thing is I'm not looking for someone to purchase the property to just turn it, but I want someone,
Right.
if they are using it, that it might have some impact on our economic development. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think leaving ourselves some options where we can say, listen, we're open to hearing, basically, is that we think, hey, I'm just making an offer to buy it for X, or I'm offering to lease it for X, or, whatever that is, and then we can kind of bring all those out. So it's not a typical, hey, we just want, this is what it is for sale type deal. So.
And I'm assuming that the commission is flexible on what could we do with it in terms of whether we lease it or sell it. You might have some other opportunities, and I think some of the people that we have met with, and I think they met with the commissioners individually, except Commissioner Crowley, I think he was out of town. But they have some other proposals on the table as well. So.
Yeah.
That might something have to bring to the table. But again, I think we need to be kind of open to other ideas as well.
Agreed. But I've only heard the one, so I want to make sure there may be 10 other great ideas as well. So I want to make sure we get the highest and best use for the city, which may not, okay. We're on the same page. Any concerns with that? Staff recommendation of moving forward and pursuing RFPs on that one?
Sell it.
Okay,
Yes, move forward on this.
okay.
Good.
All right.
So what we'll do is we'll prepare a draft RFP and bring it back to the commission, and just to make sure that we incorporate everything that you looking for.
Okay, and last thing, real quick, Carrie, question for you. We just made some changes in the charter that actually raises the standards on selling certain city properties. So I just want to be clear, I mean, we haven't taken a formal vote on these because we haven't actually done it yet. But just keep an eye out on any of these and advise the commission once it would get to that point where we're making a formal decision. If there's any of these that would fall into that category that require unanimous versus just a majority. I think in most of these cases we might have unanimous, but just making sure. And for clarity of the public, what was the change for the charter? Used to, any property city owns, any 3 commissioners could vote on and sell that property, put that property up for sale or lease. The charter that was voted in by the residents now requires for certain city properties, and there's criteria that it be a unanimous unanimous vote of the commission. So it actually raises the bar for selling public property, and I think it was a good thing. So, all right, Brian, go ahead.
So there were 4 other lots that we also felt like were good candidates that, based on zoning, facilities, and just didn't see any current or future public purpose. If the commission's okay, I'd like to hit those real quick, and we can explore more detail on these or any others. So the first is number 7. It's on Auburn Avenue, north of South Street. It's a buildable platted lot, 75 feet. It's right next to the current Volusia County mosquito control facility, so it's not, that does make it potentially undesirable for some number of buyers, but it's buildable, it's sellable. We have no use for it. We would recommend contacting the county to see if they were interested, and it's kind of a first offer to them. If not, we could put it on the market. Any questions on number 7?
So that is not on airport property?
It is not.
Okay, and the only other thing I can think of using it would be stormwater. But if we don't need it, I think that's a very high spot anyway, and you try to probably run water uphill. So, no, I have no issue with that.
Yeah, we did look at, when we looked at those lots, just to make sure that they're not needed for stormwater or any other utilities, so.
Okay. Mike.
Similarly, just nearby there, number 26.
Hang on, Brian. Mike had a comment, I think.
I'm sorry.
Where we have individual lots in communities such as this one, I think we should reach out to organizations that provide affordable housing, and if there's somebody willing to put up affordable housing, that we should transfer the ownership to them, let them operate it and run it with appropriate restrictions on that. Habitat for Humanity comes to mind as one. We're spending a lot of money to develop them on Dimmick Street, and if we can get somebody else to pick up some of the tab for those type of improvements and things, we will serve the goal of saving some money and increasing our affordable housing, which we should do.
Okay. I'd have to think more about that. I don't know. I think it sounds good in theory. I wonder about. Yeah, I'd have to think more about that. The other.
One thing that's important with affordable housing is to have it spread throughout the community.
Agreed.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, well, I agree with that concept. My question is, we have a lot of budget constraints. What's the cost to benefit, the pro and the con, on taking an individual lot like that and selling it and applying it to the significant budget needs we have, and even maybe partnering that money with a bigger lot we have in another location that can make that affordable housing project even better. because those are pretty small lots.
This one in particular, it's a 75-foot lot, correct?
Yes,
Brian?
75.
So we're not getting multiple units or anything on it.
No.
It's a single family, it's like a habitat for humanity type deal.
Right.
I mean, we have in the past have given, I think, some lots to, not in this area, to Habitat for Humanity. So.
Okay.
So, I've been on this webinar with affordable housing, attainable housing, and several of the builders, and even with the Home Builders Association, indicate that it's not actually the purchase of the land that's the problem. The more problem is with all of the regulations that are tied to developing the property, building fees, those sort of things are where the costs really rise up. That just the purchase of property is not something that prevents it from being an attainable housing. I think it's something to keep in mind, that if we have somebody who has a project or something, that they're interested in a smaller piece of property or something that would be easily developed, to look at it that way. But certainly, and who knows what the market is going to be for these properties, so putting it out for sale, we at least have that idea and know what if the true value is there or not. If we don't get any takers, then maybe that's an option to explore. But everything, we've been through 4 or 5 sessions already, and most of them agree that it's not the land that's prevented attainable housing. It's more on a regulatory issue, and the time restraints with having to go to P&Z and then go to city commissions and stuff like that. So it's something that, I'll talk about more later, but their indication is it's not actually the property that's the issue on the affordable attainable housing issue.
Well, typically, a lot like this, I mean, you're talking about between impact fees and building permit and so forth. I remember when I built my house, I think I put almost $10,000, $12,000 before I even put a shovel in the ground. So, I mean, I don't think that will go through planning and zoning, whatever. This is a small
Yeah.
lot, but I mean, if you want, in terms of waiving impact fees and building permit, we could look at that and see what we could do from that part if it's an affordable housing.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a decent idea, maybe worth exploring. I'd say on these, like we said on 2615, 2700 North Dixie, that leaving, put it out. I do agree with giving county first right of refusal. If we think there's any public purpose for them, giving them first right of refusal, but then opening it up to, hey, it's for sale, but if someone wants to approach us with a proposal, we will evaluate that and see if that is what we feel is right for the community. So I think approaching it that same way would be good. So if we have someone like a Habitat that approaches us and says, hey, if we only had the property, here's what we could do, or that kind of thing. So I think that's the way I'd like to see it approached.
I agree.
All right.
The next one, same map, is number 26. And this is a property that's at Nordman Avenue, north of South Street. Little narrower lots, 53 feet, but it is buildable. Has fairly heavy tree cover. May have some wetlands on it that would have to be evaluated. But this one, there's no public purpose here for drainage. Can't see any need for it to keep it as publicly owned. So we'd recommend, same thing, as put this out on the market.
When you say that they're inaccessible, the report says they're inaccessible, but it looks like they have street frontage. So what am I missing?
This one is accessible. There were the first two on Auburn Avenue to the north, parcels 1 and 2, that did not have public access. So number 26 that's shown here that we recommend selling, that is accessible. It's got a street frontage. This basically someone could buy it and apply for a building permit.
I got you. Okay, so sorry, I was going down the list, so I was still looking at 1 and 2 from I thought that's where.
So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I jumped around a little
That's
bit.
right.
One and 2 that are not accessible, these would be difficult to sell without additional improvements in place.
Okay, so you skip straight to okay. So 7 and 26.
7 and
got it.
26 were
Yep. Now I'm with
buildable,
you.
platted lots. So
And I had a call, Mayor, an email and a call from residents in the area that their brother lives on Nordman and they would like to buy that lot. I guess they want to be next to the brother. So there's an interest in that lot as well.
And then a similar lot, if we could jump to number 11, which is at 1203 Enterprise. It's west of Brook Street. This is also a buildable lot, R3 zone, 55 feet wide. If you drive by, the adjacent residents have encroached into this. Also, the adjacent property is a condemned property, but here again, there is no future or public purpose. It's a platted lot, it's buildable. Recommendation would be to sell that.
That's not number 11, yeah.
You're
Go to
saying
Enterprise.
the airport.
Enterprise is
It's Enterprise Avenue west of Brook Street. Yeah, I'm sorry, Michelle.
Down
It's,
near Pioneer.
This is,
Go to historic west side off of Myrtle Avenue.
Yep. Yeah, right there, there you go.
Right there.
there we go. So it's fairly narrow, but again, it's 53 feet wide, plus or minus, so, or 55 foot wide, I'm sorry. So, similar situation. Someone could buy this, and next step would be a building permit.
Okay.
And then the last one is number 22.
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
Is it in the city?
Yes.
Okay, because it's white.
It's the 11 is it's the green.
It's the green.
The green one,
the-
okay.
So the other
marker
thing,
is white, but yeah, that's
Okay.
so the other thing is to reach out to the adjacent property owners and see whether or not they want to. You're saying that because they've encroached, right?
somebody has.
So
not
maybe they
sure
have,
who.
yeah, so maybe one of the options may be added value to a adjacent property owner.
Okay.
I think in all these cases, as we talked about the last meeting, we should definitely give adjacent property owners a heads up on what's happening. I can't say we give them a first right of refusal type deal, but maybe we give them at least, just so you know, this is what's happening. If you're interested, here's the process
Yeah.
to, you know.
Um,
I think that's the right thing to do.
You know, normally, in the past, what we've done is we obtained 2 appraisals, and then so we made the minimum bid at that number.
Okay.
So, the last one we sold was an acre right there next to Norwoods, next to the fire station. And we got the 2 appraisals, and the owner of Garlic bought them at higher than the appraised value, so.
And then the last one that kind of jumped out is just no public purpose is number 22, which is on 5th Street, just west of Palmetto. This is not a buildable lot. It's a 50-foot, I call it a postage stamp. It's 50 by 60. We thought maybe this was either like a lift station or some type of utility area. There is no current or planned utility use for it. This could be either sold or vacated to the adjacent property owner to the west. So this is the lot. We maybe talk to this owner first and see if they're interested in acquiring that. I don't think we could sell it for much, again, because it's not buildable. So we would just look to work with the adjacent property owners on that one.
Go ahead, Mike.
On all these little individual lots here, we should set a protocol. I would like to try to find a way to use them for affordable housing. The second step would be offering it to adjoiners. I do like that idea because they might have a need where they're over covered right now or they have an insufficient side yard. So we can get appraisals on it, but sometimes they are really they're worth less than what the appraisal shows. So I just think we should make every effort to take them off our hands so we don't have to do maintenance on them and move ahead.
You know, in this particular one, because it's not a buildable lot, I think probably the appraised value, it's not that much on it, so.
Yeah.
But the other ones, I mean, if the commission desire to just kind of go and approach the Habitat for Humanity in terms of the affordable housing, then I don't know if we have even to have to get the appraised value on them, so.
Correct. And they might not be the only organization that might do something like that. maybe our own housing authority may wish to be involved, although I prefer them not to be on these divergent tracts.
I mean, there are some creative ways. Maybe we could reach out to the Builders Association and see if they wanted to, in conjunction with that, if they have multiple contractors who wanted to, you know, whether to do a donation or whatever, they could get the lot and build an affordable housing for someone like the Habitat for Humana.
Correct. I participated in those elsewhere.
So those were the only ones, Mayor, that jumped out as potential sale, just no immediate or future public purpose. There may be others in that list of 100. You know, one other group, number 17 and 21, on Francis Avenue on the south side. These are definitely buildable lots, but I looked at it. There's some very nice trees on this property.
It's off of Enterprise.
I'm sorry, yeah, there we go.
Turnbull Street.
All right, thanks, Michelle. This could be a very nice pocket park. It's has a combined area of about 0.6 acres. At some point, so I maybe look as we finish up our parks master plan, we could look at having something there, but just because of the location and how nice these properties are, but probably look to hold these first and then see if at a later date maybe look for a potential sale.
When you say create a pocket park, we have a lot of these neighborhood pocket parks that mostly go unused. And it's only when we discuss the possibility of selling it or getting rid of it do people all of a sudden become interested in it. What I would like to do is use more of these pocket parks. What we don't have is fields. There's nowhere, you know, finding a place for kids to have an open soccer field, football field. So let's keep that in mind, that if we do what we do with these little neighborhood pocket parks should probably have a lot to do with simply creating open space for kids to play in, things like football and soccer. So without committing, and you know, it's the best of both worlds, because we don't have to put a lot of money into it, and what we're really missing is open space.
This is a good candidate for that. Maybe not like a ball field for soccer, but certainly open space that could be
Just
used.
a field so kids can run around on.
Exactly, yeah.
That's it. We don't need it marked. We don't need anything. People can put their own little goals out there and so on and so forth.
Especially until we see the Parks Master Plan, you know, that stuff sounds great. It sounds great to do. It feels good to do. Utilization, you know, maybe I drive by at the wrong times, but I think overall park utilization isn't as high as we like to think it is when we put these concepts out. I think the people that frequent our parks the most are city staff that have to mow them, maintain them, cut the grass, pick up the trash, etc., or the volunteers that do those things, and or you know, vagrants and folks that we're dealing with later in the agenda. So I don't want to see us continue to do things that feel good, but then in application aren't actually achieving the results that we're talking about. I've been to some cities and you see parks that are, you know, they're vibrant. I mean, they have life. There's always people in that park from sun up to sundown. We don't have that. I'm not seeing that in most of our parks. There's a few, but I don't see that in most of our parks. So I think until we get this Parks Master Plan, I don't want to see us trying to expand our park at all right now, and especially none that would require any kind of maintenance. Now, if we want to do stuff like the disc golf course type approach where that's, you know, it's completely passive and I don't have staff out there having to maintain that in any way, shape, form, or fashion, that's totally different. But that's just my thoughts on that.
Okay. So those were the items that we wanted to bring forward. We'd be glad to talk more about any of these properties, but I know time's tight this morning, so we can move on to the next item or continue to discuss here.
I thought we had a couple lots on Pine Street. This is not on your,
The ones on Pine Street that they were purchased because of the flooding.
uh-huh.
So they were supposed to be just left alone without buildable on. So that's 632 Pine. That was purchased through FEMA
Mm-hmm.
grant. We had a house on it, and the house had a repetitive loss. So perpetuity, we cannot do anything on it.
We
Same thing.
could
Same thing. The one on
conceivably-
615, I think, Goodwin. That wasn't purchased by FEMA funds, but it was purchased by city fund. But it's for the same purpose. We had a flooding house there, so.
But I mean, we're talking about elevating some of the other houses in the area to make them buildable. So, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
it's doable.
It's doable. The only thing on the one on Pine, it was because it's FEMA money. The one on Goodwin, it's a city fund. So, I mean, if you wanted to do something with that, as far as you're having the home being elevated, then I think it'll be fine. But 632, we cannot do that anymore.
Okay.
Do we have to maintain ownership of it?
Yes, we do. It's supposed to be like a public property, so we purchased it, we own it, and we maintain it.
Are we're actively maintaining it, or are we gonna let it go back to kind of a natural vegetative state?
I mean, it's supposed to be perpetuity that we own the property. You're talking about 632?
I'm just talking about, in general, those properties you're talking about, are we trying to actually maintain them as like a turf lot, or are we just
Yes.
letting them go back to natural vegetative state?
No, it's supposed to be sit open.
The one on Pine's just an open lot. It stays mowed, so.
See, that's the kind of stuff that I just, like, that's a lot of staffing to maintain that. And
I mean, if it has to stay that way in perpetuity, then I know we at one point had quite a few trees out the little tree farm. You know, maybe putting a
We did,
small.
if I'm not mistaken, we did plant some trees on that 632.
Look, I'll have to go back and look. Okay.
The one on 615, I think we used it during the construction for the Central Beach.
Yeah, I remember that.
Now that one is a different story. That one, I think, if you sell it, and somebody has to make sure that the house is being elevated, I think it'll be fine. But it was purchased for that purpose. It's exactly repetitive loss.
I don't know, I think if we could take opportunities on stuff like that to say, why are we doing this? Like, why are we paying someone to, so we're not collecting any revenue off of that lot, no property tax now. And now we're paying someone to go mow a lot, once a week at least in the summer, once every couple of weeks, or else it gets too high and you can't mow it. And I'm saying just plant some nice big trees out there out of the tree farm and then let it return to, every time we cut down a twig on 44, I hear from everybody how they love the natural foliage and vegetation. So let's let it return to natural vegetative state.
So, I mean, what are you suggesting to put some more trees on? Is that?
No, I don't know. I don't know these lots in particular. I'm just saying, like, let it return to. If we're not going to ever do anything with it, we can't. I don't know that we need to also maintain it in perpetuity to park-like status. If it's not being used as a park, if it doesn't have purpose as a park, just let it return to. I mean, there's vacant lots all through the city, and you drive by them, and it's just, it's a vacant lot. It has grass. It has, has palm fronds and whatever. So it just anyway.
Well,
We don't have to make that decision today. I'm just saying, just in general, I'd like to see us not spending as much time and resource maintaining a ton of it. We have a ton of stuff to maintain. So any chances we can take to let it. And then that gives us, take the time we're doing that and focus it on, this park, Pettus Park, some of the, Holland, some of the parks that do actually get utilization, we can spend even more, redirect that staff time there. So.
and I guess
I
maybe what we could
I
do
agree
is
completely with that view. I think maybe we shouldn't have agreed to maintain ownership of it. I'd like to just, if we could sell it and put a restriction that that it not be built upon. Maybe an adjoiner would like it.
think
Maybe if
because
we
FEMA
sell it for $100, we would be ahead of the
But
game.
FEMA bought it. We bought it with FEMA money, so I think that's why.
And that's what I was saying, is maybe I could reach out to FEMA and see
Correct.
if it's something where either you vacate or you could still have one, to the north and one to the south, with the idea that they cannot build on that portion
Yeah.
of it.
Correct.
Okay,
That's what I would like to see, because we shouldn't be maintaining it.
yeah. All right,
Where is this property?
It's 632 South Pine. It's on the
Okay.
west side of South Pine, just north of
purchased it?
Second.
And FEMA purchased it due to,
Repetitive loss.
the flooding.
okay, because it's low,
Yes, repetitive loss on flooding.
but that can be used for affordable housing or no?
No.
No, you cannot build on it.
You can't rise the, okay.
All right. Brian, anything else on available property? Any other questions?
No, I think you've hit the main point is this exercise showed the city owns a lot of property, and there's some I think periodically need to look at, is there a public purpose? What is our maintenance cost? Is there another way to use this? So I think this was an effective exercise.
Yep. And to Commissioner Colodey's point, I think what you heard from the rest of the commission is certainly open to the affordable housing angle, but I think like we talked about on all the properties, let's kind of go to the public and say, we don't have a use for this, so what are some other uses? Is anyone interested in buying it? Is if you want to approach us with a proposal for affordable housing, whatever those may look like, and then we can look at it case-by-case basis to see what is the right thing for that parcel, that community. I don't know that a blanket approach of just saying, okay, let's hand all this property over to one entity or 5 entities for affordable housing is the right approach. I mean, they may not have the budgets to build the affordable housing right now. So, I think that would be the right approach. And then it's consistent across all of them, where we've said in every case, we're going to the market and we're going to accept proposals to see what's right for the community.
Okay.
CCL.
CCSL. So
CCSL.
at the December workshop, the commission directed us to adopt the DEP line as our CCSL line. So instead of 2 lines, we would have 1 line. That idea has been very well received by everybody we've talked to. It eliminates confusion, so this would be very helpful. And just for reference, looking at the screen here, we have the blue line and the red line. The blue is the current city line. The red is the DEP line. If you go back to the first slide there, Michelle. So just wanted to have a follow-up discussion is when we bring that text amendment to the city commission with adopting that line is we started the discussion last time is do we want to look at the associated regulations so that going forward, is there room for providing some relief? So what we've done in this staff report is provided kind of 4 options for that, and option 1 being no relief, keep the regulations as is, which it is very restrictive, only allows dune walkovers and seawalls east of the CCSL, and it kind of goes down from there. And this first example is this is Hill Street here. So just from an aerial view, the CCSL line is way back here in this area. So you have all these buildings, some single-family homes here, and you've got this is a condominium, I believe, or an apartment, is way beyond the line. And if you're beyond the line, all you can do is rebuild in place with the same footprint. And that's the way the rules have been. If you want to do anything else, the answer is no. There really is no means for even a variance to do that. So example 1 is, if we could go to the next slide. There's a line. This is an example that recently came in on Hill Street. If you go to the next slide, please. We'll go one more. I'm sorry. And zoom in on that a little bit. So, homeowner comes in and wants to build an addition on their home. You can just pull it down just a little bit. So in this case, the CCSL line and the DEP line are the same. So that really doesn't provide relief. Here's an existing home. The ocean's up here. They want to put an addition right here on the side of their house, no further to the ocean. That is currently not allowed. So option one would be to allow new building and hardscape improvements east of the CCSL, but no further east than the existing principal building. So buildings that are there now, that's your line. You can do improvements that meet the LDR, but no closer to the ocean. That'd be one option. Second option would be to expand the list of items that are allowed east of the CCSL beyond dune walkovers and seawalls to include only at-grade improvements. And this comes before us too. Someone buys a home, they want to build a pool. Pools are not allowed east of the CCSL. So even though it's at grade, that land may be disturbed. This house has a deck here now. If that deck was not there, they would not be allowed to have that deck to east of the CCSL. So or a pool there. If they wanted to remove that deck and replace it with the pool, that would not be permitted. So you could look at allowing certain improvements, no buildings. Certainly sight lines is a major concern. So that would provide some relief there. And then the fourth option, being the least restrictive, would be to allow construction, including buildings, on existing disturbed or developed lands just outside of dunes. So if you're not in a dune and that land has been disturbed, you could build what you're otherwise permitted to do on that land. So that would be, you could build buildings even further east than the existing building if it was disturbed land. So there's just kind of a range from keep it as is to how much it could be relaxed. We don't have to do this with moving the line, but bring it forward for consideration. We get a lot of questions about this, and most of them are either situations like this, or someone buys a house, waterfront, moves in, and then I get this call saying, "You mean I can't do this to my house? Are you kidding? I would have never bought had I known that." So there's some frustration out there with that. So we bring forward these options.
So my first comment, and then I'll open it up to the commission, but my first comment is that issue that we just talked about is something I think we have to, and see our rep from the Realtors Association here, I think there's some work, some education needed on the realtor side so that they can be better partners with this, because we have had this complaint, and we as a city don't even know a transaction's about to happen, so we can't be the one to inform the new potential homeowner. But I do think it's a disservice to our new residents, and then it puts us in the line of fire. But it's like, hey, that was there. So if Ashton, happy to have staff come and do some education sessions to realtors, because this is something, it does happen. They call me, they call Brian, and they get mad at us, they get mad at everybody involved, and rightfully so, because in their minds, they bought it, and they didn't understand anything about some of the restrictions. So I'm not saying we can go over every code or whatever with every potential thing, but I do think some realtor education might be helpful in understanding some of these things. So just wanted to say that while I was thinking about it, and we had Ashton here. Commissioner Colodi had his hand up. Do you want to silence that real quick?
There are two issues. One's really making our line coincident with the state's line. That's a separate issue. Definitely move ahead and do that. As for people who move in and don't know what they're doing, it's a thing called due diligence. Hello. Move the line, make it coincident, separate issue, move ahead as we've decided to. Second thing is due diligence. I just can't believe people in this day and age buy things and not knowing what they're doing, especially when they're spending a lot of money. Seems like even the more they spend, the less they care about the rules and regulations. Option 4, I do not agree with in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not going to even consider that. But some of the other changes are important, and I would like to see us loosen up some of those regulations and tighten up others. I have this thing against dune walkovers when people can get to the beach by walking 50 feet away to a public walkway. I just don't see the need to extend the structure through the dunes one way or the other. So those are my recommendations. Now I'll turn my phone off.
Okay, other comments? Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Just to that point, there is a little bit of relationship between adopting the DEP line and these potential relief, because previously an applicant could come in and ask us to move our line by text amendment. And once we adopt the DEP line, that option really won't be there. And it's probably a good thing. Moving the line project or site by site is probably not a good practice. So in a kind of that line will be fixed even more than ever once we adopt the DEP line. And that's why do you want to offer a little bit of relief knowing that that option is no longer available?
I agree completely with that.
Yeah.
I don't even want to consider whether we're making it harder or easier for any individual property owner. It's strictly administrative thing.
Yeah.
That line's backed up by science to a certain extent,
Yep.
and ours isn't.
Yeah, I think that issue's cleared, so we're not debating moving the line. We agreed, I think at least the majority did. I don't remember what the vote was, but we're moving the line, or staff's bringing that back, but presuming that moves forward, I think the question today is, do we want to make some other things? The observation of that meeting was, we have things that come before us, and we really don't, the staff recommendation has been pretty consistent if they meet all of these things. So the question is, why put ourselves in that spot of kind of robo-approving things that could be done at a staff level? And that's where these options come in. I could support 2 or 3. I agree with Commissioner Clody. I think 4 is probably a bit too wide open for my comfort level going from where we're at. I can support some variant of 2 or 3. I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the commission thinks.
I could also support 2 or 3. So many of these properties, they're all individual pieces of property, and it's all uniquely different. So it's hard to say, make a generalized statement and say, yes, we'll do 2, but everybody is unique in their own way. So, given the option of 2 or 3, if you guys can take another quick look at it and say, for the majority, this would be the best relief, or, I think that would help going forward. But I certainly could support either 2 or 3. I certainly.
Yeah. So Brian, just so I'm clear as I'm kind of reading this, so 2 includes principal, like our example here, they could actually add to the principal building as long as they don't go further than the principal building. But could they also, let's say instead of that addition, let's say that was a pool and a patio, would that also be allowed in option 2?
So 2 would only allow the addition. It wouldn't allow anything east of the existing building line.
But saying this hashed area to the right, this proposed connection that it shows there,
That would be allowed.
in place of, let's say that's not a building, but that was a hardscape, a pool with a patio, that would be allowed there, but just not east of the building.
Yes.
Okay.
Except the pool, you can't have on the side yard, is that correct?
Well, yeah, you have to
Well,
meet
yeah,
all the LDR requirements.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just mean, yeah. Okay. Whereas 3 says only at grade, so in 3, they wouldn't be able to do this. They wouldn't be able to do the proposed building, but they could, with staff approval, going through the process, could build a pool behind
Pools,
it.
driveways, decks, maybe just no vertical buildings would be the idea behind 3. So under 3, you could not build. You're right. You could not build the addition, but you could build a paver walkway out here to your deck, for example. You can't
Right.
do that now.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do a second-story deck, that would not be allowed.
We'd have to clarify that as far as deck is
Okay.
whether.
Okay.
I genuinely agree with the discussion. I really have no disagreement. I see an architect in town has dealt with this issue. Do we have any public public comment during this? I don't know if you
We
want.
we can take some if you had a
Tom,
public
you got
comment.
anything you want to say on this?
Putting you on the spot,
Not
Tom.
not to put you on the spot. I just know that this has. I know that a
You've
while
dealt with it,
ago
yeah.
you had a specific issue about this in your profession. So
Well, actually, this project is potentially one of mine, like
Tom,
941 North Atlantic was.
Grab that mic if you would.
Just
Pull it
put
up.
the mic up so.
There you go.
It's great that y'all are making the lines one. That's the way it should be, so there's no confusion and no more LDR or text amendments. With the state, they'll allow you to build east of their line as long as you conform to their construction standards. And in this case, it was a very unusual situation where it's basically two houses that are connected, but they're not. You have to go outside one house to get into the other house. And that's why I proposed this and spoke to Brian about it. To actually, we're not going any further east, but we're basically making it one house. I've done 400 or 500 projects in town. This was the most unusual one I've ever done or trying to do. But no, it's just, there's a lot of confusion. Like when I was doing 941 North Atlantic, which you and Commissioner Hartman were on the board then, or on the commission then, people thought we were trying to move the house 62 feet out into the beach. And all we were trying to do was rebuild to the existing built eastern line. And for a myriad of reasons, it was not approved. So hopefully we can allow people to exercise their personal property rights to reasonably improve their property. But it's really difficult because it's almost like a variance. Each property has its unique circumstances and needs to be, I think, looked at individually by staff, maybe by P&Z, and then by y'all, because each project, and I've had numerous ones, each one's different. You know, from just like that one that came before us, it was just a pool. You know, that's versus trying to complete this house versus trying to rebuild a house. You know, there's so many different conditions, and it depends on the ecosystem at that point, like between Sapphire and Crawford, which is at the end of my street, which I live on Robinson, is a very volatile area. But it has an eastern built edge, which in my opinion should be able to be maintained so that people can rebuild. But that line, even the state line, is west of North Atlantic Avenue. So I think it needs to be considered case by case, you know, with general rules, but then with each one of these, it has its own unique of specifics.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, conceptually, just zooming out for a minute in light of those comments, I mean, in theory, I think there's some who would say, you know, this grandfathering status east of the line, you know, we shouldn't allow rebuilding because eventually, due to whatever, all construction should be to the west of that line. That's the new standard right now. Is we're not allowed, you know, if you wanted to build a whole new house west of that line, then we'd say, no, you can't do that. The state has agreed, like this is the line where we probably should be building, and yet you look at the map and we have tons of building post that line. So, you know, I can see both sides of that. You know, what I don't want to get into is we've allowed a ton of stuff to the east of the line, and then we're in one of these FEMA situations like we have on Pine elsewhere, where we have this, you know, some massive losses, and you know it's a whole other thing. But I could support 2 or 3 as it is right now. We get in a lot of minutia. You can fill the chambers up. You get residents that are unhappy, and there's misunderstanding of. I believe, and we've had environmental expert after environmental expert testify that dune walkovers are better for the dunes than the practice that happens, which is people cutting through the dunes, which there's no way to stop. There's no way to enforce that. It's like a littering law. You're never gonna enforce it. So there's misunderstandings of that. So it creates, you know, hours of debate and discussion up here repetitively that frankly I just don't feel are necessary. So So, if I had to say, I would say, which of these, between 2 and 3, which does staff consider to be kind of more restrictive versus less restrictive? Because there's kind of pros and cons in each of that from a restrictive standpoint. Do you have a recommendation between 2 and 3, or a preference or comments?
I think 2 is so simple to explain to any property owner that here's your building, you can't go beyond that. That it really has a simplicity to it that, and protects the dune. Says
Okay.
you can't do anything further. We can dune protection is extremely important. 2 would say, look, we're protecting the dune, but we are going to allow you to do improvements west of where you already had a building grandfathered in.
Okay.
3 is a little trickier because it's getting into some things
Yeah.
that are at grade. So 2 is, I think, the safest, cleanest, fairest.
I can support 2.
But you'll get another crack. If we do a text amendment, we'll draft that and bring it back, goes to P&Z for input, and then back to y'all for.
Yeah, I was about to
tweaking.
say that we're not approving it today, but I don't want to have staff chasing their tail on this either. So if we can give some solid direction and then everyone remember what the direction they gave, I do look forward to P&Z's input as well. They may think of stuff we haven't, because we've got a lot of experts on that board as well. But general concept, if you brought something that looks a lot like number 2, I could support that. Other comments? Again, I want to give Brian enough. We've all said kind of 2 or 3. Are you good with? Sorry.
No, just 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
2 or
okay.
3. All right.
Good.
I would, just one more thing. If we can avoid them having to come back here, as long as they comply with 2 or 3, I think that would be fine.
Avoid them, the applicant, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah, agreed. I think that was the intent.
I think that was part of our original direction.
Yes.
Just didn't have it
Yeah.
at staff level.
So we'll change it to 2, and that way it's not coming back here. Okay. All right. Next item is, do you have one more on that?
No, I just want to, we're talking about the use on particular property. I would like to see us look into the dune walkover thing, because I think we're just getting too many of them. That's all.
When you say look into the dune walkover because we're getting too many of them.
Establish a criteria that if there is a existing public walkway within 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever we decide, that we should not allow dune walkovers.
Okay.
So we did look into that issue, and so we had talked about riparian rights before, and riparian rights are kind of lumped together. They include riparian and littoral rights, and people along the ocean do have littoral rights. So while the case is not exactly on point, there is case law that suggests to me that if we said you can't have a dune walkover because there's a public one 50 feet down that could be closed at a certain time, I think we would get into some issues.
Okay, I'm not interested in prohibiting them from walking to the ocean or going through that area. Let them walk on the ground.
Well, I think that defeats that. I think that is proven by science to be the wrong move.
I don't think so.
Okay. So, with all due respect, I want to disagree with Commissioner Colodey's response. I think we do not deny people from having a dune walkover. Not that I don't agree. We have a lot of them and they're unsightly. But I think the science is behind the supporting of, we're never, kind of what the mayor just said, we're not going to prevent a property owner and their family or friends from walking over the dunes. Very similar to Smyrna Dunes Park. The reason there's a boardwalk is to keep people off of the actual dune and ground, and it's high enough for animal activity to go around it, underneath it, all that kind of stuff. And there was a time when the surfers were cutting through the middle of that, and they started wearing a trail, and there was a lot of acrimony over that. So I don't think that denying someone to put a dune walkover on their property, certainly not going to stop the situation. It's certainly going to, people are going to wear out the dunes by walking right over them, on top of them, and we're just going to create more of an issue. At least that's my thought.
Okay. Bob, let's move on to residential dock size.
Okay, so The commission wanted us to look into the dock regulations because some people thought they may have been too strict, and kind of how did we get to where we are now? So basically, back in July or August of 2019, we were contacted by the Manatee Protection Program Manager. They were concerned about our current regulations. Some of it was where we allowed more slips than what the protection plan allowed, which we adopted. We looked into other cities, including the county, to see what their regulation was, and we were the only ones that allowed 4 slips for a single-family dock. The rest of them were all down to 2, which was part of the Manatee plan. So we made that adjustment in the LDR to bring that down. Another issue they had with it was we didn't have a maximum size of a dock in our regulation. So we were asking for input from them of what they felt, would be an appropriate number. They were looking at shade cover over the water. They said that more shade that you have over the water, less vegetation can grow, so then the protection of the manatees and other fish are trying to protect won't come and eat because there's no vegetation for them to eat. So staff looked at it. We used 1,000 square foot as a base. That included basically a shaded area of the water, so it included your walkways, the dock structures, your boat houses, and the areas where the boats or lifts were in place. So since we've done that, we've had a couple complaints for some larger docks from some of the dock builders. So we did look at the other cities, and so we kind of came up with a recommendation of maybe a minor change to our regulation. The first change that we recommend would be we could eliminate the calculation of a walkway that's 5 feet in width or less. So the walkway that goes out to your dock structure, we wouldn't count that against your 1,000 square feet. Also, we wouldn't calculate the area of the mooring pole area because we really don't know what size of a boat they're putting in there. So the mooring pole area could accommodate a 25 or 30-foot boat, but they could have a 20-foot in there. We really don't know. So
let me stop you. I apologize. Just so I'm understanding it with the terminology you're using. When you say walkway, you're talking about the gangway of the walkway out to the platform of the dock.
that's correct. So from your property line or your seawall or riprap out to your actual dock structure, we would exempt that as part of the calculation in 1,000 square feet. So for somebody who may be on the main channel that has to go further out because they're trying to get to the deeper water, that would be approved by the state, we wouldn't count that against their actual structure of the 1,000 square feet. So we wouldn't calculate the mooring area or the boat storage area in a slip, and we would not count the walkway itself against that. So that was one option, and it seems like the ones that we had that were being denied would still fit in that square footage if we took away those extra items. The second option would be the same as the first option, but instead of 1,000 square feet, you could raise it to 1,200 square feet. Another option would be not changing any way we calculate it, but bring it up to a maximum of 1,500 square feet and still calculate all the items that we're calculating today. So those are kind of like three simple options, very simple fix in our LDR, and we're just looking for direction so we could quickly get something on the books to get that changed.
So Mayor, if I may, so I don't want this issue to get lost or hijacked, this conversation on whatever the hell was built, this absolute disaster monstrosity over off of Quaysisi. That's a totally different situation than what's going on, what I'm addressing. Because we went from something to this recently, right? This restriction.
We did it early 2000.
Right.
Early 2020.
So,
Hang on, because that doesn't line up. We had to do it.
yeah,
You're saying the 1,000 square feet was end of 2019.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
2019 in July, August, at the end of 19,
Yeah.
beginning of 20.
We
is
did the
when this
manatee
regulation was
thing in
changed.
early 2000, I think.
But
Did you, I thought I heard you say we did it early 2000.
Well, we started doing the study in July and August of 2019. So
2019,
somewhere
yeah.
at the end of 19,
So
beginning
to
of
your
20 is
point,
when the
yeah,
regulation.
we
when
made
the
this
adoption
change
was-
after that doc.
yeah. We also made this change, we made this change relatively recently.
Yes.
And the problem is that number one, people's gangway out to their dock vary wildly depending on how shallow it is. We have a very shallow river. So there's many docks all along Riverside Drive that have longer docks than most people in my neighborhood or Commissioner Colodey's neighborhood, because there's generally deeper water there. Other than this crazy thing, and I want to address that thing that got built, because I don't want to confuse the issue that I've brought up. Coincidentally, this disaster is showing up, and I don't want people pointing to what I'm talking about to justify or say that had some contributing effect to it, because that was built while we had this in place. What we have is the biggest issue is the gangway out to the dock. Many people in the community would not be able to reestablish their docks or replace their docks in the event of a hurricane under the 1,000 square foot rule. There's a lot of very long docks. So the open portion of the dock area where your boat hangs, most docks are on some sort of a cradle, and we used to not include the space underneath. It's not necessarily covered, and that was the other thing we added. So anyway, I support going from 4 to 2. The only two issues I think you have hit, and I thank you, I appreciate it, Bob. The two issues of concern that I had from all the calls that I was fielding from people in the community not being able to either get back what they had, or the concern of building a dock what they felt was reasonable. Thank you.
And just let you know, too, if they have a second story sun deck, whatever portion of that sun deck is over another section of wood, we don't count that against it. So we don't double charge them or double count a square footage of hard dock if you've got wood dock over another wood platform.
Yeah, I'm not personally, this doesn't have to do with this, but I'm not a big fan of that. I think those double-decker structures in most neighborhoods on the water is an eyesore, but that's just my personal opinion, not to be confused what we're talking about today.
Do we have a height limit? I mean, could they?
We do have a height limit. It's 15 feet above the mean high water line.
Including the double-decker?
Correct.
Okay.
So what happens is if they build a sun deck, they usually have a lower height of the bottom of the deck based against where their boat's being stored, or if they had a roof structure, they could have more opening under that roof structure where they get a little taller boat.
Okay.
But what we do not count against the height is we don't count the railings, because that's required by the building code. You have to have, 36-inch railing, and we require them to be stainless steel. So we don't count that against their height for the 15 foot. It's basically to the top of whatever the hard structure is.
Okay. So, for clarity, before we dive in on this, because I was probably about to go down the rabbit hole that you didn't want us to go down, because help me understand the dock that north of the North Causeway now off of Quayacece that looks like they were trying to bridge the whole river. What is in place now that wasn't in place then? How did that happen, and what impact does what we're talking about today have on that?
Well, when that dock was being designed and permitted through DEP, that was being done prior to this regulation, even though it got built at a later time. So their approval was based on DEP allowing them to get out to the deep water. We had no limitation for a size, so there was no maximum size of any dock.
There was no maximum period. It was
There was
basically
no
whatever
maximum
DEP
period.
allowed, it was allowed here.
Yes.
Okay. Now we do have a maximum size.
Now we do have a maximum size,
Okay.
but we're looking at trying to make that maximum size
Got it.
basically the dock structure itself and not the access points trying to get to
Okay,
that.
so I guess my concern is, I mean, that one, I haven't even seen the structure go up yet, because they're still, trying to cross the river. So if we take out the walkway, now all of a sudden, like, I ask again, what would what we're doing today, how would it impact in a case like that? What would limit it from being, to me, there's be some limitation to say, I don't care if you have to go out that far to get to deep water. You can only go a certain length out. Like, at some point, we got to just say, you can't cross the whole river to get deep water.
Right.
Like, I just.
So currently in our code for areas that are not along the Indian River, so they're not in the channel area of the Indian River, we limit you to how far you can go out. You can go out 25% of the width of the waterway, as long as you're not blocking the deep water access from across of another platted lot that's buildable across that waterway. If it's not a platted lot that's buildable and it's just conservation land, then you can go 30% across that water for your dock. When you're dealing with the Indian River, that's under the guidance of DEP, and if you take your boat and go south of here, you'll see where dock structures should go out 100 feet, 150 feet. As you get close to Edgewater, sometimes they go out 200 to 300 feet because the channel is on that side of the river, and it's so much shallower on this side. So we don't have anything, we wouldn't have anything in this new regulation that would limit that because we don't have the jurisdiction over the width, the length out in the federal waters.
And I want to identify, because we have docks that go 350 feet out in this town. What makes that one so different? So I was trying to think through this. Number one is, it appears to be almost looking like a bridge, not a dock. Docks are generally low in the water, a few feet above. If I'm not mistaken, and I've only seen this from the North Causeway, this structure seems to be very high.
Yeah, and then it has,
So it's like the double-decker dock. Having one structure close to the water, it's not a big deal. When you get that second-story structure, it becomes imposing. So this structure, I don't know if it being long is what is the problem, maybe to some extent, but what seems to be is when you look out over the view and span, it takes up so much of that, and I think that's due to the height that this walkway has become. And it seems to have a peak, almost like a little bridge, to allow. So there's a lot going on with it, and the question is, how did that happen? And I'm putting you on the spot. I don't expect you to answer.
That's fine. So it's
if
going
I
to be
may,
the
though-
DEP permit
Hang
of the
on, Mark,
design.
real quick, hang on, let me, so, to me, though, that is probably an element of it, but it's also, there are other docks, I think on both sides, but definitely on one side, that are not near as long, so it becomes like this relative, like, wait a minute, I got these docks that are all about the same, they're within a few feet of each other, and then this one that just shoots way out, and so I think that's where everybody's like, wait a minute, that's out of character, out of scale.
Yeah,
It's like a high rise in your residential neighborhood. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that sticks out.
And what's happening is the river, as Commissioner Colodi knows very well, our river is filling with sand at a rate that is not like anything historic. We're seeing it in all the neighborhoods. We're seeing it in the sand in my neighborhood is filling in. There's something going on, has been going on for a while now. So what's happening is those docks, in a 6-month time, the movement of sand is so extreme through Rockhouse Creek that you actually have new paths. So all those older docks that you see were older and were built when it was actually deeper water. So they're much shorter. But that whole area is one area that is filling up with sand. And so I guess what I'm hearing is for that person who built a new dock to get out to the deep water, that's essentially what became.
Correct. That was the permit that was approved for from DEP to reach that deeper water, and the design of the walkway and the dock and the location, and then the building department basically have issued permits based on that DEP permit.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, when that dock was first proposed, there was a big discussion in the neighborhood about it. The reason that one portion is so high, it was a requirement of the state to allow boats to pass through there and have a way to go from north to south, which to me, because there's virtually no water underneath.
Right. That's why they needed to go out so far to begin with.
Correct. And their permit, when they did permit to go of the shifting sands, their permit right now doesn't move even more. Neighbors did not object because they have the same problem with the shifting sand. So in all likelihood, we're going to see more of them out there. I don't like looking at the thing. But the reality is, if you live on the water, you got to be able to reach the water. So as much as I dislike it, I can understand why that has been allowed. To the issue of the changes proposed, I do not support increasing the area to greater than 1,000 square feet. And I do think it should include the area under your boathouse, which shades the water below. I can tell you from personal experience that nothing grows under my boathouse. It just doesn't. And we're talking environmental concerns. And it's just, I don't want to bring up my neighborhood and my neighbors, but my channel is getting much, much narrower by these giant platforms that are being built out over the water, which are not necessarily being built for their boats. They're just making their yards bigger. So I don't want to get involved in that discussion. The idea that walkways out to a boat dock should not be included in the area, I can understand that, and on some of these real long extensions that are necessary to reach deep water, people shouldn't be penalized for that. So I would exempt those from the 1,000 square feet. I would also, if I had the opportunity, eliminate the second floor platforms. But that doesn't get to the issue.
Yeah, well, I didn't understand. You said you support the maximum 1,000 square feet, but the people who needed a longer dock, you want to create an exemption for.
Only because of the natural conditions that do not allow them to reach deep water.
I think he's saying
So-
exclude the walkway, but keep the 1,000 square feet total. But
Oh,
excluding
okay,
the
so
walkway.
exclude, okay, that's what I was missing.
Yes.
You want to exclude the walkway from the 1,000 square feet, but keep the 1,000 square feet, including the portion underneath the boat.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not an expert, and I can't tell you about the science behind something not growing, but I will tell you this. Where does everybody fish? Everybody fishes the structures of docks because that's what holds the fish. So the irony of, and I don't have the answer. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying the irony of the environmental concern about stuff not growing is, okay, that may be the case, but fish hold structure. That's why we take all this stuff offshore and start dumping all this concrete and everything else to create structure, which creates habitat. So I'm not an expert. I just find the irony in the conflicting,
I understand.
Yeah.
I can go out there and I can see what fish are down there if the water happens to be clear. I also have neighbors who put lights down under the water to
Yeah.
attract the fish,
So right now the water's been clear for the past week or two. It's been pretty
relatively.
And I can tell you that I don't see the difference between the portion between my dock and my neighbor's dock looks no different than the portion underneath my dock. It's all mud.
Mr. Hartman, any comments on this one?
I certainly would support excluding the walkway as part of that. When you talk about mooring poles, those are just the poles that are set aside of the dock and not actually covered with anything, or?
Correct. So sometimes what people will do to create their second slip is they'll
Right.
put mooring poles out because they could have a sailboat or they have something that can't
Right.
fit under structure. And so currently we would count the square footage of mooring pole to mooring pole against their 1,000 square feet. Now their boat could be larger, but we really don't know what size boat they're going to put in there. So,
Right.
or if they have a lift, we could calculate the area of the lift instead of the area of the pylon. It just would be up to what direction we get from you guys. So when we do come something back, we got something quickly that can satisfy.
I wouldn't count the area within the mooring poles. The only thing I would count over the water is something that's roofed.
Which would be closer to the option number one that's, I think, in the staff report.
It could be. I don't recall the details.
Well,
I
I'm-
don't see option one.
my position is don't count the walkway, and if we're going to limit it to 1,000 square feet, I'm okay with that, but don't count the portion underneath because some docks have roofs, some docks don't. If you do that, can I remove the roof and then still be able to get the 1,000 square feet. It just makes it clean and simple. You get 1,000 square feet. You don't include your walkway. It's easy to understand. It's fair, in my opinion.
I tend to agree with that. I don't include the walkway, cannot exceed 1,000 square feet. It's,
Because big boats, small boats, how much, it's.
well, because in the mooring pool area, like I could see that getting out of hand, it's just simple.
Right, and that staff's recommendation is exactly what you're asking for. That way, we're just limited to the wooding structures or whatever material that the dock's being made, not including the walkway, and not taking the areas that are actually still could be open water if a boat is or not there.
It's what's covered by wood over the water.
So if you don't want a boat, you could actually build a dock that's 1,000 square feet if you just wanted a platform to put your chairs on and fish off the end of it, just like somebody could have a slip. So we just limit the structure square foot.
So he's in disagreement with that. We're in agreement, so I'm curious to hear where you are.
I have a question.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
It's an interpretation.
Okay.
I got a boathouse. I got a dock next to it. Does the 5-foot exception apply to the portion of my dock next to the boat?
We would only want to exempt the access point of the gangway or walkway out to the dock structure and not exclude the actual wood that's between your slips. So anything that's in that square of where your dock structure is, that's where we want to really do the calculation of 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me one way or the other personally, but
Definitely exclude the walkway, but I would include it if it's undercover, but to move on, I'll go with staff's recommendation.
Yeah, we would count anything under cover. We'd count that.
Okay.
But if it's an open slip without a cover or no boathouse, we don't
Okay.
count. We won't count the area that the boat's actually being parked in.
All right, good. I'm good with that.
I want to make sure I understand this before I get excited. The portion of the dock that's cut out where the boat sits over is not included in the 1,000 square feet.
Currently, right now, it is included in 1,000 square feet.
What staff's recommendation is to remove that.
Correct. So that way, we're not counting that open space where a boat pulls in and out in the slip. Don't count that against the 1,000 square foot.
That's where I thought we were going. And
Unless
that's
there's
what
a roof
I
over it.
understand.
As
Okay,
well,
good.
but hang on, but there's an if.
Yeah.
Unless it has if that is all open, if it's an open dock like this, we're only counting where the wood is, and then the boat pulls up, that's just open water, we're fine, that's not included. But if you put some poles up and you put a roof over the whole thing, then that all becomes part of the 1,000 square feet,
Right.
including the open water space the boat pulls into.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
at
thought
that
you-
point, you've
That to
created a
me is the
boathouse.
confusion of, let's just do the 1,000 square feet, not including the part the boat goes over. That's how it used to be.
Right.
It's easy, it's clean, you understand it. That's my opinion.
Yeah. We would count the boathouse against 1,000 square feet because it's an actual covered structure.
Yeah. So, okay, so.
Or we
basically,
could
if you
exempt
wanna-
that and just have a maximum size of a boathouse.
Well, so what you're saying is if you have a roof over your boat, you're gonna count the 1,000 square feet.
Yes.
If you don't
Yes.
have a roof, the portion your boat is sitting over does
Doesn't
not count to the 1,000 square feet.
Correct. Because if you don't have a boathouse and you had 1,000 square foot of wooded dock area,
Right.
and then you put a 300 square foot boathouse over an open slip, well, now you're at 1,300 square feet.
All right, so here's I like it the other way. I'm gonna tell you that I think we have stopped a lot of potential future problems by the walkway to allow people to be able to use it to recreate their dock. I think we're still gonna get people in here very upset over the fact that they're not able to utilize that. They need a bigger boat, but I think it helps a lot. You know, I'm almost there with you guys, but we'll see where it goes.
All right, so I think what I've heard is if we come back with staff recommendation, we're gonna be within spitting distance, and then we may have some tweaks. We haven't heard from one commissioner, of course, so we'll see where it goes from there, but it'll be pretty close. we won't go wild off of that, hopefully, so. All right, thank you. Next item, CRA. Mr. Edwards, I think he's gonna help us out on this one.
Mayor, Commissioners,
You can pull it, yeah, there you go. It's on.
okay. This is a presentation on the CRA grant programs. As you may recall, the city obtained approval from Volusia County back in going into the fourth quarter of 2020. And subsequently, I brought before you a set of projects, CRA budget projects that we could support. And they were included in that was a grant program which we could allocate about $500,000 to for different commercial facade and property improvement grants. Just going to fast forward a little bit and go straight to the sample of redeveloped properties on this presentation. Just to kind of give you an idea of where things have been to date with the US 1 corridor, particularly in the historic West Side. Some of our notable developments have clearly been the former Daytona Beach State College site. As you can see the before, and you can see the after. Next, we have the Smyrna Hotel, rather, that is now Dollar General. And of course, we have the Haviline Express Loop that also now became the Take 5. You can see the enhancements there, and then before we had the lumber yard, and so now we have a city parking lot. So there are potential redevelopment opportunities there within our CRA, and I've taken the time to kind of survey just a couple. It's not by all means an all-inclusive list, but 536, 538, 540, Dixie Freeway as an example of properties that are listed for sale or lease along US 1. The next one is a vacant site I'm very familiar with next to a business, Gary Transmissions there. That's a site that's been sitting for a while. And then, of course, the old gas station at the corner of Washington and US 1 is an area, opportunity site. I've actually talked to the realtor of that particular location, just as an example, who has indicated that they would may be interested in the CRA perhaps purchasing that for redevelopment purposes, and they'd be willing to negotiate possibly. But as a result, we do have recommended CRA grant programs that we would like to encourage along that corridor. And the intent primarily with the CRA grant programs is to incentivize the desired uses through CRA grant programs. And we are proposing, as a result of that, 3 programs, which I have vetted with our Volusia County staff, and they are good with. The Adaptive Reuse Opportunity Grant would really be an opportunity grant program that is designed to take buildings like what you saw with the old filling station at corner of Washington and US 1 and the other buildings that were listed there, and basically encourage the reuse of those buildings, encouraging different types of uses. I know sometimes old gas stations such as that have turned into a restaurant, they've turned into an office space. And so this would be an opportunity for the CRA to incentivize that type of use to change the trajectory along US 1 from what it has traditionally been, which is mostly the hotels, motels, and things of that nature, and just trying to really look at ways in which we can encourage other types of business uses along that stretch. The other 2 grants, which are pretty much the same grants with the same grant criteria, it's just the budget allocation is different. is the Small Scale Commercial Facade Property Improvement Grant, which is a total of $100,000 allocated toward that, with up to $25,000 award per approved applicant. And then a large scale, of course, the total budget allocation is $400,000, and it would be up to $100,000 award per approved applicant. And in total, again, that breaks down the $500,000 allocation. The other program, which is a partnership program we have right now with FDOT for US 1 median improvements, is to fund $200,000 for that. Now, the eligible properties and businesses that we have identified primarily are economic development strategic plan industries that we already have identified and already have approved. Aerospace, aviation, light industry, technology, creative classes. You can see the rest of the list there, as well as the existing business uses that are there, such as retail and restaurant, and also healthcare or medical office. And then on the next, you can see, next slide, you'll see the list of commercial facade eligible expenses. You're covering stuff like stucco, roof replacement, signage, and things of that nature. The ineligible uses, of course, would be basically interior renovations, anything that would go toward the business trying to maybe perhaps use that for business payroll or something of that nature. And then the property improvements, basically we would look to try to encourage any enhancements to parking lots or enhancements to landscaping, buffer areas where we can kind of take something that's right up near the road that doesn't have a lot of mitigating buffer, and we want to try to create some type of landscape to give it a better aesthetic appeal. Sidewalks, exterior site lighting, underground and above ground utility improvements, things that sometimes are impediments for some small businesses. And then, of course, ineligible expenses, very short list, but those are things that we would not support. And so generally, Mayor and Commissioners, that is generally the highlights of the CRA grant programs. Commissioner Colodi, I think it also addresses the issue that you raised regarding the 509, 510, where it does allocate the $250,000 of that balance toward the adaptive reuse grant specifically. Are there any questions?
Yeah, first of all, great presentation. The adaptive reuse, the 250, what would, from an eligible and ineligible criteria, would that apply to, which of these would that fall under? Would it be similar to?
The eligible criteria, well, the eligible businesses would be the medical, the professional, for the adaptive reuse.
Yeah.
And that could be across the board for the commercial facade as well as the small scale and large scale commercial facade. So all three, really.
Okay, so basically it would be, depending on what type of thing they were potentially using it for, we would get into the next slide, if you would, Michelle. We would get into this, where it would be this is what it's eligible for, depending on what, if it's a commercial, large scale, et cetera. Okay.
Yes.
I have other questions, but I'll open up to the commission. Comments, questions? Go ahead.
I'm glad to see we've allocated that money,
Yes,
or
sir.
we're proposing to. It's very good. I've basically been going over the exclusion items, and I like all the things on the list there. I see we're focusing mainly on the commercial aspect here and along the highway. I don't know if there's much of an inclusion into the residential portions of that. I would like to see that addressed a little more so. Obviously, I don't want to see anything that the public can't benefit from. I like the outside improvements. I can see putting money into landscaping, improving the appearance both for those properties, and the adjoiners would benefit from it too. Ingress and egress is an issue with older properties. When you change the use, you might have to move driveways to keep DOT happy, so I can see spending money on that. but I think this is a big step forward going through, and I do appreciate the work that you put into it.
Thank you very much.
I would like us to look into the internal residential neighborhoods to see what more we might, I don't want to leave them out. I know we paid attention to them in the past. We've made some improvements, but I think maybe we should have a component for that. It may be there, and I might have missed it, but
let me
those are my thoughts.
Okay, so let me get clarity from you, Commissioner. Are you referring to like housing rehabilitation grants, or are you just talking about having programs that apply to the neighborhood that is not on the commercial frontage?
Improvements to the neighborhood. We've put a lot of sidewalks in, which are good. We could use them throughout the town. There are some buildings that are commercial in nature. Whether they're viable or not, I don't know. But if we can improve the appearance of those, perhaps it would make the owners want to put some money into the inside of them too. So I just don't want those possibilities left out.
Yeah, I got some. So one of the things that I want to point out, there's a big difference between the past CRA that went from roughly 1985 to 2010 or 15, and what we have today. And a lot of that has to do with what the perceived big perception over abuses. So no matter how good we can make this, it's still nowhere close to what the old CRAs used to be. So you're going to get a lot of people out there who they saw something from the old CRA, and then they're going to say, I want that, because I hear you have the CRA. Chances are you're not going to be able to get it. This is a huge distinct differences. And then going into Commissioner Colodey's issue is, you know, the county was very difficult to deal with initially simply because of the backlash. There was people who got a grant to paint their home. People got a grant to upgrade commercial bathrooms. So there's a long history of things that went on that we can no longer do. And I'm not saying, you know, what Commissioner Colodey is saying is right or wrong. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that we can't do with the CRA today that were done with the previous ones. And that issue was addressed where somebody may be able to paint their home. They can't do it. They don't have the money to paint it. Was it an investment? I guess the criteria was really, is there a tax benefit in the long run to the residents? Because this is using tax dollars. And so, you know, for the most part, that was the acid test used in determining, getting an idea of the county's comfort level, which makes a lot of sense. Using tax dollars, the taxpayers should get that back over time. It's like an investment. So anyway, I know Chris, God, I want to thank you for all the work you've done. I know Colin, I have for almost 8 years been on top of Colin. Let's get this thing going. So this has been a tremendously long program or process to get to where we are today. And I know that I want to thank you all, because there's things that came before you that we needed to be able to go to the county to get this going. So I'm thrilled to death we are where we are today with this, and I'm hoping that this will help US 1 even if it comes halfway to what it did to Canal Street. We all are going to benefit in this community from this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chris, couple other things. So, two examples, and so tell me where they would kind of fit in here. Number one was we had, I think it's okay to talk about now because he's done what he's done. So we had Stan Harrison, who was trying to move off of Magnolia and relocate, and he wanted to go into that gas station, I believe. But as you mentioned, DOT came in and said, well, hey, which was going to be great. I mean, just the presence for him, good for his business, good for the community to have that there, going from an old gas station to a sleek new State Farm agency. But what he ran into is FDOT saying something with ingress egress, and I forget all the details, and it doesn't really matter. But I guess would the changes we're if this went through, what resources would have been available in that situation to help maybe that project specifically?
Well,
As
before,
an example.
when, in the previous, for the regulations that were holding us back, we
Hey,
could only
Chris,
use.
if you could speak to the mic because people are there.
Yeah.
Well, in the previous CRA, we could only use those funds just for public right-of-way or public improvements. There could be nothing that we could do for the private side of things. So the delineation is, or the difference, I should say, is between now we can take those funds and use them for the private side of the equation as well. So we don't have to match the 50% match that we had before. That was also kind of impeding that project.
So I guess to just drill right in though, so he would have been able to come and apply for a, would that have been like a small scale or large scale property improvement grant?
I'm
Large-
not certain exactly what the dollar amount was he would
It
have
was
been
a lot, like,
requesting.
let's say it was
But let's just
200,000.
say, yeah, if it were something like a 200,000, that would be an adaptive reuse criteria. It would fit that criteria because of the change of use that he would be presenting. So
Okay.
it would be eligible for the adaptive.
And maybe he didn't get the whole 200, but if we were able to say, hey, out of this, we could have gotten 50K or 75K, maybe it'd have been enough to get it down to where the numbers would work for him again.
Absolutely.
And maybe he could even get some other grants from the state. Okay,
Mhm.
so it would go into the adaptive reuse because he's taking it from gas station to this. All right, now I mentioned earlier, we got Time Mango that's relocating onto US 1. Stopped by the other day and saw that property and talked to the property owner, and he said, he had to spend, I think, 10 grand because going from having to add some huge grease trap that wasn't there before and converting some connection from like a 4-inch to a 8-inch or something. I forget all the details. So something like that, again, making a great investment in the property. Probably could afford to clean up the signage and the landscaping out front a little bit. Where would that fall into this? Which program and what kind of eligibility and criteria?
Well, because there's no change of use and it's taking it from restaurant to restaurant kind of use, basically that would fall either commercial, the large or small scale.
Okay.
And it would be based on the amount in which that investment was made. If it was something that we felt was warranted, the large scale, and we went 100,000, we would go that route up to 100,000 for that applicant. If it were a small scale, we would go up to 25,000 for that applicant.
So he would have been able to come forward and apply for 25K, and even if it wasn't maybe the particular thing that he was doing, maybe there's other things that he is doing that would
Absolutely.
help
Parking lot,
alleviate the budget. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Couple others. So on the permit fees, including permit fees that are required by city code, I wonder if that's, we're kind of, we're paying ourselves in some ways on that. So I wonder if from a making the program dollars go further, if we waive those versus paying a grant for somebody to just write us a check right back, I don't know what that does to keep money in the program versus, you see what I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So it's just something to consider. Why wouldn't we just waive that instead of making the CRA pay it?
We have to look into that because, as you remember, the building fund is a little bit different than. So we're going to look into that. But just to add to the, in particular, the site at Washington and US 1, we took that site when we spent a lot of hours on trying to develop the criteria.
Yeah.
And Commissioner McGurk will tell you. But we took that because that seemed like was probably, I would say, not the worst case scenario, but probably has more significant than, for example, the Time Mango.
Yeah.
So we were able, with the changes we've done with the county on that resolution, that was a big move, and I think it was a success story for the city. Thanks to Commissioner McGurk with all the meetings that we had with the council, but maybe trying to, in terms of the impact fees, that's something that we probably could waive. The building permit is a little bit different. I guess we have to talk to Katie to see if we could do that or not.
I guess just in light of everything else we're talking about with building and building permit, I don't want to see us giving grant money that then goes into a restricted fund. You see what I'm saying?
And that's what I'm saying. So maybe we could look at whether impact fees, building permit, whatever we could do to help on that end,
Yeah.
we will do that.
So an example using Tymango. So the difference between the CRA now and today is when the corkscrew was done, let's just say he got $500,000 toward, which was 50% of the cost of his project, he could put that anywhere. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
Now they're saying facade.
Yeah.
So let's say that the grease trap was not a expense you can use on CRA, but the building permits were. So in this case, he can apply the money to the building permits, would then back end it, be able to give him money
Right,
for
to do
the
the grease
grease trap.
Yeah.
So that's because
Yeah.
they're so restricted on what we can use the CRA money for.
Gotcha.
That's not like the old days,
Yeah.
which were much easier and cleaner and easier.
Yeah.
Now it's, you gotta look and
Yeah.
see what's the definition of a facade and so on and
Yeah,
so forth.
And I'm not saying we wouldn't
Yeah.
cover the permits. I'm saying, do we want to take the money out of the CRA to do it? Because then they write a check that goes into a restricted fund versus if we waived that, accomplishes the same thing for the end user, but doesn't put the money restricted, leaves it in my CRA that can go to maybe one more business, you know, or call. So, and then the only other one that jumped out at me, pressure cleaning, when talking about exterior renovations, pressure cleaning was specifically called out, but then it on the next one, we talked about non-fixed improvements. So, you know, that one just seems a little bit, you know, I get it, but that one's kind of right there with, I'd call that a non-fixed improvement, so that one gives me a little pause. I wouldn't want to see us doing grants for everybody to just pressure spray their buildings. They should just go run a pressure sprayer. Come on, just hustle a little bit. So, and then roof replacement, I mean, I guess, you know, that is what it is. I guess is that pretty common in CRAs for roof replacement to count? I mean, that doesn't beautify the building or the street to me, but.
Yeah, but it's an exterior facade, an important place. So Tymango comes in, they have to redo the roof. You got a $40,000 expense.
Yeah.
Just to redo the roof. So
Okay.
you can include that as part of the exterior facade. And again, it's just finding places you can put the money into to make
Gotcha.
the overall project cheaper.
Okay. All right. Those are my comments. Otherwise, yeah, I appreciate, I know Commissioner McGurk has been on this for a while, Khaled, but Chris, you've really seen this through. You hit the ground running with it, so I think this will be a good program. So.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? All right, thanks, Chris. And last agenda item for today, and we got about 20 or so minutes to stay on schedule, is homelessness discussion.
We have the captioning, by the way, up until 1 o'clock, so it seems like we're doing on a good timing. This is just to give you a brief update on the homelessness issue. On January 19th, I held a kickoff meeting with a larger group of attendees that included Volusia County, all the cities in the southeast Volusia, the churches, some of the business representative, resident representative, Advent, and the Housing Authority. I wanted to just kind of build a coalition and somehow and try to streamline the services that's provided. A lot of the comments that I heard and the search that I did, they always talk about having a coalition so you would not duplicate services and you will have an effective program if you establish a program. So I kind of gave them an idea of what are we trying to accomplish in terms of goals. My goal is to come up with a reasonable program that fits the needs for our community. And if I can get the other cities to jump in with the county's help, fine. They're all in agreement if we have a program that it fits the needs and it's kind of along of what they're trying to do. And to come back to the commission, hopefully, at the end of March, beginning of April, to come up with a strategic plan of how we're going to attack this homelessness issue. Challenges, obviously, to come up with a program that fits the needs, number one. My worries is to come up with a program and spend all this time and come back to the commission and maybe not to get an approval from the commission that somehow. I think that would be probably discouraging to all these people that were involved. So I'm hoping that we come up with a program that the commission will have a blessing on. The second challenge is the location for whatever program or center that we have. That seems like an issue because talking to other cities, they keep mentioning about having a location within reasonable distance from the city. Don't have it out there like 20 miles away because you're not going to have people to go out there. The third challenge is the funding. My goal in terms of the funding, obviously that's going to impact the general fund. So hopefully we can get some of the cities to participate, and also, and I will take this challenge myself, that I will reach out to the businesses in the community, and I'm encouraging the other cities to do the same thing with their businesses and see if we can get a commitment from these businesses, at least on a 5-year term, where they could contribute to this source of funding. Because I don't think the city can take this on their own. I mean, that's a big impact on the general fund. So hopefully we could come up with a system for that. So these are the major challenges, and obviously the implementation. So I'm trying to, at least if I come up with the program, to have a short-term and a long-term implementation on the program. So I'm really looking forward to come up with something to the commission back in the end of March or beginning of April. So
Okay.
more than happy to answer any question that you might have.
So one thing for me is and just for the commission's benefit, what I heard city manager say loud and clear was, we're putting a lot of kind of time and effort, but even some kind of political capital out for this. And so if all that is done and a proposal's brought and you know there's a plan in place, and then working with other cities and all these other agencies, and everybody's kind of signed on that we say, hey, we're going to do, you know, we're okay with this, and then it comes to us and it dies, you know, a lot of not only time and energy and effort is wasted, but also some political capital. You know, the next time we call up our fellow city or one of our partners, community partners, you know, they're going to say, well, hey, you know, so I heard you loud and clear on that, and so I think we owe a frank discussion at this point to say either stay the course or hold the phone, one of the two, before I don't want to put you out on that island by yourself and then you bring something here and it gets shot down. So that being said, I mean, we don't know what we don't know yet. So you may bring us a program that's very different than what we had in our head. So with that caveat, what I want to say is, for me, when I think about the program, I guess the one concern that I would have to be able to address by the experts and as this, and whatever the proposal would be, you don't want to become, it's one of those things, you don't want to become the Mecca. You know, you don't want to become the premier destination in our community because we handle this so well. And I think that's what you'll hear from our community is, hey, we don't want to be too good at this. Like, I think there's many in the community that want to be, if I can just speak frankly, less hospitable, if you will, because we want this, especially the vagrant part of this population. And I'll reiterate again, it's worth saying every time. Those that have fallen on bad times, but they're making every effort to get above. The single mom with this community is the most giving community. I've seen posts on social media where people have said, hey, come stay at my house tonight. You know, hey, somebody posted, I'm on hard times. Come stay at my house. I'll get you a hotel room. We're a giving community for people that want to better themselves. But there's this whole other population, folks that are dealing with, you know, mental health and drugs and other items. So that is going to be a concern that we're going to have to overcome. And when it comes down to making a final decision that, yes, we want to move forward with that, that's going to be something we're going to have to be able to understand and address with the community, that this won't put us on the radar and start importing the problem from the surrounding area because we're good at handling it. So that'd be kind of number one on my list, is how we address that. Are we leaning towards becoming really good at this versus I think many would like us to become just a lot more inhospitable for it. And that's the two choices.
And that's what the discussion, and I forgot to mention, and I'm sorry about that, but at the end of the kickoff meeting, I suggested that we create a smaller group. So right now I have about 7 people in the group. We're meeting on the 10th of February and the 17th of February. So, and most of these people that they are on the group, they have quite a bit of experience dealing with the homeless. So what I'm hoping is to at least have maybe 2 or 3 options for us to consider. I'm not going to come up with just one option. So this way we could have just about a global vision on it in terms of, do we want to go through this program and what does it do to us on the long term? Whether it impacts the general fund, whether it impacts the community, or whether it attracts the other side. So I'm hoping that we come up with several options for you.
And I'll tell you why this is top of my mind. So I read about the great work they're doing in DeLand. We heard from DeLand city manager when we first started talking about this. But if you read one of the first, I think it was in the News Journal, it may have been some other source, but I read an article, and it's a great story. It's a good news story. One of their first people that moved into the bridge, they then transitioned, and they have a job. They're a productive member of society at this point. Good news story. But that one of their first persons that moved in, she heard about the program, drove there or took a bus there or was transported in some way from Tampa to DeLand. Heard about the program, came from Tampa to DeLand. So DeLand taxpayers, took on a problem that is kind of a global problem. And that's the struggle. And that's, I think, the public perception that we'll deal with. And frankly, that I start out with just based on that one story. So, if I can help someone who's here and local, I think we'd all give $1 out of our pocket to do that. But I can't afford to help Miami's population. We don't have the money. So that's all I can say about that. Those are the concerns.
And that's why it's probably this particular issue is probably one of the toughest issues that's not just us. I mean, throughout the whole world that they're facing. And
I've said it. I've talked to it on the campaign trail. I've talked to it at different community meetings. And I've always said, look, if I had a solution to homelessness, I'd be making $1 million a year as a consultant to every major city in the world because it's a problem.
We're going to try to do our best, at least to address the concerns that we have. And if we could go beyond that, that's fine. If not, but at least just to address the issue at hand at this point. So.
Okay. So to your, and I know I'm talking a lot. I'm going to open it up here in a minute. So to address your basic thing, you've got my support for what you're doing, but know that I do have concerns. I mean, coming to us with, hey, here's kind of maybe 2 or 3 options is better because those are going to be the concerns, and I'm going to have to get answers because I'm not an expert on this. I'm going to have hopefully a room full of experts who are able to say, yes, that is a common concern, but here's what experience has shown, helps out with that. So I'm okay with you doing that. I'll have your back on it to the extent I can, but we all report to the residents in New Smyrna first. So,
well, we're going to look at each option and whatever the pros and cons for each one. I mean, I'm going to point them out to you early on because I had heard from others the same concern that you have.
All right.
If you make it too successful, it might be, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah. Commissioner Cluny.
I appreciate the work you're doing and speaking to other towns in the area, but we have the First Step program in Volusia County, and we don't participate in it because of the distance as much as anything else. And I think that we should focus in-house here in New Smyrna Beach because some of the other towns like Oak Hill and Edgewater are a distance away, and their commitment might not be as strong as fitting in with the program we have here. And I echo the sentiments of the mayor. We've got to concentrate in-house. Now, if my memory serves me correct, we allocate $35,000 a year towards the homeless.
Yes.
and it's through a divergent method. If we can find a way to get more benefit out of that 35,000, even if it costs much more to go along with it, I would be willing to consider any type of program like that. So I appreciate your efforts. I keep an open mind. I just think we should really concentrate on New Smyrna.
So I took part in a recent webinar, and this is going to grow tremendously as soon as the federal government stops with the rent subsidies and the evictions. Once they start allowing evictions again, you're going to see the homeless population probably double or triple. There are that many people out there that are living on borrowed time. And so I think it's important that, you know, he continues the work that he's doing, keep that in mind. And if we can focus on, like you said, not the vagrants or not the, you know, the habitual homeless people who truly want to be there, but truly the families that are going to be in need in the near future, I think that's where we should focus our efforts on. And, you know, you have my support because I've been into this now for 2 years. So certainly anything we can do, I support you.
What he said. What he said. And to an extent, Commissioner Hartman, I know you're passionate. You spent a lot of time on this. You've attended a lot of different seminars and talked to organizations, and I commend you for that. I'm going to tell you that when we spoke to DeLand, when we asked the tough questions, it was tougher than the answer. My heart goes out to DeLand and the program they're working on. But when we asked them basic questions like how many people has this pulled off the street, has it helped? They conceded, well, it's a little early. We really can't tell. Not really. Not yet. We hope. Everybody in town is hiring. I know there's a disconnect somewhere. All those homeless people are going to get kicked out. Every city is not the same. Our city has done, thank God, fairly well through the pandemic. Most of the businesses have been hiring and are continuing to hire. The service sector. So there are spots for some of these people. However, if you're asking people, whether they're residents or businesses, to give their money to solve a problem, which is get them out of here, but then you're going to give money to keep them here and feed them, that's going to be a difficult sell. It can be very difficult to get buy-in from the people who actually experience the problems and want them out. Everybody sympathizes with the homeless, but it's gonna be difficult to get buy-in from the people who get the dirty end of that stick to keep them here. And I think the mayor alluded to that. Khaled, I'm going to support you as much as I can. I think you've been given a Herculean task that is next to impossible. And I say, let's find a city that has done this and it's worked. My expectation for you is not to be able to solve a problem I have never seen anybody solve. I do not want the buck to end in your lap because you couldn't solve the problem. So we'll go forward. We'll see what we can do. I help the homeless as much as I can myself. The problem is people who are living with it in their residence or dealing with it at their business. Be difficult to get the kind of buy-in we're looking for. So anyway, thank you.
And you're right, and to tie in a couple issues here, and then we're almost at time, but you're right. Everyone in town is hiring that service sector. I think you would hear that even, you know, you can hold a couple of service sector jobs and still struggle to afford some of the you know, most of the housing in or around New Smyrna Beach. You'd have to get kind of out of New Smyrna, but that's a whole other whole other debate. But there are jobs available. There is income available for those that are willing to work in New Smyrna. That is an accurate statement. All right.
All right, well, this is perfect timing.
Yes. All right, last item is commission comments. We've got 7 minutes left on our closed captioning. My hope is, I'll say this, my commitment is, I have no comments other than I think staff has done a good job. I think staff continues to do a good job. I'm hopeful, 2020 was a rough year. Really, just, our accomplishments in 2020 was survival and dealing with a rapidly changing landscape, operating landscape almost weekly. So I'm hopeful as we've now learned to operate in that environment, things have, leveled off a bit. Not that it's not any more chaotic or disruptive, but we're now just used to that chaos and disruption. That 2021 is a year that we can get back to checking some things off the list. And we started off today talking through those items, and so I'm hopeful we can make some progress on that. So my commitment is I'm not going to add 100 other items to the list because we just decided all that stuff. So with that, I'll open it up for commission comments. Commissioner Colodi.
None.
Thank you. Commissioner.
I like the progress we've made at the last two visiting sessions. We've actually made decisions, and I think that's very important. The tough decisions, I think you talked about it Tuesday night at the meeting. Hey, you know what? Let's stop looking at this stuff. We all know the problems. We're going to make half the people mad, half the people not sure. But let's continue to move forward and making decision on things because I think we're making progress there. Thank you.
So I'd like to see this a regular thing. And I think that was part of the strategic plan were these types of workshops where we can talk through these things, maybe one or two items at a time, and give staff clear direction, progress, and check them off the list. So, going forward. I know it's easier for some of us who are unemployed, but or retired, than for the rest of you guys. But these kinds of sessions I think are beneficial, and we can focus, and don't have so many other things stacked up behind us where we're trying to hurry along, or try to we end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So.
Yeah, I agree. I have found these, and I can, as one of the two gainfully employed folks on the commission, I can say, finding a 3 or 4 hour block of time. All day sessions can be a little hard. You just get too far behind on the emails and the phone calls, but finding a morning session and a 9 to noon or an 8 to 11 type deal to just really hit a couple of key items. I can find that time. Hopefully it's not even too burdensome on staff. In some ways, I think it's a net gain because you get a drill and a deep discussion, and you move forward, and you're not having to continually churn an issue, at 4 different sequential commission meetings. So I'm open to that. I'll defer to staff as you need it. Make it available. We all committed to it via strategic priority. So.
Well, we'll try to develop a schedule and probably present it at the February 9th meeting for the commission to consider based on your schedule and so forth. So
Okay.
I just want to thank the commission for giving us the direction. I think that makes it easy for staff. It makes it easier to accomplish these tasks. So we appreciate it very much.
I just want it noted for the record, we're 3 minutes ahead of schedule, so nobody can accuse me of running a long meeting today. Meeting adjourned.
Kelly's got your clock on. Kelly has the clock, 3 minutes. So.